Up on this Friday's edition of Rise and Shine in just a bit. It is now 6 o'clock Central African time. We start off with the news. Here's Jwalani Tulo Mwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Rather, it's Matapana Mahape on the news desk today. Starting off with this story, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa will travel to the US tonight to attend the homegoing celebration of life for the late civil rights icon Reverend Jesse Jackson in Chicago tomorrow. The civil rights leader died last month, aged 84. The cause of his death has not been released, but Jackson had been diagnosed with aggressive supranuclear palsy (PSP) and was in hospital late last year. Ramaphosa is expected to speak at his funeral at the request of the Jackson family. It will be preceded by a more public homegoing ceremony today, also in Chicago, which is expected to be attended by the Democratic Party leaders in the United States. And conservative Anglicans meeting in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, have pulled back from creating a new leader with the same authority as the Archbishop of Canterbury. Instead, they created a new civil headed by a Rwandan cleric, Dr. Laurent Banda. Many conservatives are unhappy with the church installing its first woman, Archbishop of Canterbury, Sarah Muleli, later this month. The BBC's Justin Murphy is the group's spokesperson.
The issue is not same-sex marriage, nor is it about the female archbishop. It is whether scripture or contemporary culture governs the life of this church. The reordering recovers the original Anglican structure, a fellowship of independent provinces under scripture, free from colonial, Canterbury-centered history.
And South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile says the evidence coming out at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry indicates that there are loopholes in government's measures to fight crime and corruption. Mashatile was answering oral questions in the National Council of Provinces. He says President Cyril Ramaphosa has acted on the Commission's preliminary report by instructing both acting Police Minister Feroz Kachaila and National Police Commissioner Fani Masemula to start the process of investigating and prosecuting rogue police members.
We need to be preventative, and I'm hoping that the recommendation from the Madlanga Commission will help us in that regard to say, here are the loopholes that you need to close, so that we mustn't wait until people have committed crimes and then we act. But the system must be such that it prevents this from happening, so that there is no opportunity for criminality.
And South Africa is asking local drug makers to start a process to make Gilead Science a long-acting HIV prevention drug, Lenacapavir, domestically. This is a push to bring a production to the region where it is most needed. The government is working alongside international partners, including Unit Aid and the United States Pharmacopoeia, to identify which local company could make the twice-yearly injection safely, effectively and affordable and provide any support needed. A license for a South African company would be the seventh such deal, potentially boosting access to a drug many HIV and AIDS experts have said could help bring an end to the 44-year-long pandemic of slashing the numbers of new infections. And the leader of Hezbollah says the group will not surrender as the fighting with Israel escalates. In his first televised address since the latest hostilities began, Hezbollah chief Naim Qassem accused Israel of carrying out what he called a prepared aggression against Lebanon and vowed the group would continue to fight despite the cost.
He says our choice is to confront them to the utmost degree of self-sacrifice. We will not surrender. We will defend ourselves with our capabilities and our faith, no matter the sacrifices.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Matapela Mahape.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headlines, Samson helps India into the T20 final with tight win over England. And CAF postpones WAFCON 2026 just 12 days before kickoff. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
5 minutes past 6 Central African Time. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much indeed for joining us for this, the Friday edition of Rise and Shine. Stay connected to Africa and the world with Channel Africa, the international voice of the South African Broadcasting Corporation. Watch or even listen, or should I say listen and even watch anytime, anywhere at channelafrica.co.za, on the Channel Africa mobile app, on SABC Plus, or via DSTV and OpenView open audio bouquets. My name is Peter Ndoro.
And I'm Asanda Beda. Thank you for joining us on the 6th of March, and we'll be together for the next 3 hours. You can also connect with us on our social media platforms. On Facebook, our handle is Channel Africa, and then it's at Channel Africa 1 across the other platforms. We're literally everywhere, so you can find us. What are we looking at in the show today?
Yeah, well, you know, Channel Africa is first with the African story globally, and right across the continent. Today's a really important day because on the 6th of March, nearly 70 years ago, Ghana gained its independence from Great Britain, and it became the first sub-Saharan Africa to break free from colonial rule, led by His Excellency, the Honourable Kwame Nkrumah. So happy Independence Day to the people of Ghana today, and thank you for leading the way in terms of freeing us from the grip of colonial rule.
And they're changing the name of their main airport there to Accra Airport
Yes,
now. From
yes.
that, was it a rebel leader or
So
a coup leader?
It's a coup leader, Kotoka.
Yeah.
And it is one of those controversial things. And I've always said, you know, you shouldn't name anything after someone who's living, because they still have time to cause problems with their name. Much later on in life, maybe you can. But I do personally, I think airports should be named by their cities rather than individuals, because you're always going to upset someone. You're always going to have saying, but what about our guy? What about XYZ? Why did you choose Asanda Beda? Asanda Beda International. Why wasn't it Peter Ndoro International? Whereas everybody agrees in the name of the city. That's my personal feeling.
All right. Well, another story is Zambia. We go there where the Democratic Party leader Judith Kabemba has urged politicians to stop politicizing the delayed burial of former President Edgar Lungu. Of course, there's still that story. Can you believe it? We're still talking about it.
How long has it been? It's been months, eh?
Yeah, so those stories and more
Wow.
are coming up. And of course, we are together for 3 hours. So quite a lot to cover in terms of what's happening in and around our continent, news and current affairs wise.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
After the 6 a.m. news on Rise and Shine, we bring you a segment of the show that we call the Africa Roundup. It's a list of news that you need to get in the know about, compiled by our team of researchers, our reporters, as well as our editors. And it serves as a way to throw forward into the new day in what one can expect to develop. And today's Africa Roundup starts with Zambia's Democratic Party leader, Judith Kabemba, who has urged politicians to stop politicizing the delayed burial of former President Edgar Lungu. In a video message released to Zambia National Broadcasting Corporation, Kabemba said the country's current president, Hakainde Hichilema, should not be blamed for the delay, calling on political leaders to respect the late leader and allow the burial process to proceed with dignity.
You cannot continue accusing an innocent person. President Hakainde Hichilema is innocent in this matter. He is not the one that has refused to bury his predecessor. And let me also speak to the fact that some sector of society from the opposition are propagating the idea that President Hakainde Hichilema must recuse himself from attending the burial of the former head of state, that is not possible. Colleagues, that is not possible. We all know that it cannot happen. When the president attends that funeral, he is not attending in his individual capacity. He is attending as a holder and a protector of the Zambian constitution.
A leading group of conservative Anglicans have announced the creation of a new council to oversee the global Anglican Communion, a move that's being seen as a direct challenge to the authority of the Archbishop of Canterbury, the traditional head of the church, ahead of her installation.
The announcement was made at a conference in Nigeria.
Today is an historic day for the global Anglican Communion. Indeed, the future has arrived.
The Global Anglican Future Conference, or GAFCON, groups conservative churches mainly from Africa and Asia. It claims to now represent the majority of Anglicans worldwide and opposes liberal shifts in parts of the Anglican Communion. The group was particularly upset by a decision last year by the Anglican faith's mother church, the Church of England. That is, to appoint its first woman Archbishop of Canterbury, Sarah Mullally. She's due to be enthroned as the 106th Archbishop of Canterbury on March 25th. On Thursday, GAFCON said its new council would include bishops, clergy and lay members. Rwandan Archbishop Laurent Mbanda was unanimously elected as chairman.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has appointed Major General Junhui Wu of China as the new force commander of the UN mission in South Sudan, known as UNMISS. UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric announced the appointment during the organization's daily briefing.
Major General Wu succeeds Lieutenant General Subramanian, to whom the Secretary General is grateful for his effective leadership as force commander. Major General Wu brings to this position 40 years of leadership and operational experience in the People's Liberation Army and in UN peacekeeping. Most recently, he was the military attaché of the Chinese embassy in Germany.
Meanwhile, Kenya has unveiled plans to expand. Okay, let's take a look at the story just before that. That takes us to the DRC.
So the UN chief also confirmed the appointment of Major General Junhui Wu of China as the new force commander for the United Nations mission in South Sudan, coming from that previous story.
Mr. Swan succeeds Bintu Keita of Guinea, to whom the Secretary General is grateful for her important contributions and service to the peacekeeping mission. Mr. Swan is an experienced diplomat with a long career in African countries facing complex political and security transitions. Most recently, he served, and that's since March of last year, served as the special representative and head of the UN mission in Somalia. Most importantly, he's had a 32-year career in the U.S. government with multiple assignments related to the DRC and other places.
The international airport in Nairobi. Now, the project comes after months of government cancelled controversial multi-billion shilling deal with India's Adani Group. Roads and Transport Cabinet Secretary Davis Kachir says that the expansion will help ease congestion and increase both passenger and cargo capacity at the country's main international gateway.
We are out competitively advertising for interested bidders to come in today. And when we close the bids, there are the PPDA rules on opening of bids. Evaluation process will be in line with the law and so on and so forth. We'll really work around the clock and expect to deliver a new airport within 3 years. Parallel to the new airport, we'll be working on an optimization upgrade of the current facility within 15 months, so that within 15 months, the current facility should be able to uptake up to 12 million customers.
And to end off, a U.S. mining company backed by billionaires Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates is locked in a dispute with Belgium's Africa Museum over who should digitize historic maps of what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo. The maps are currently held in the museum's archives.
Mining startup Cobalt Metals says it's offered to support Congo in digitizing the archive. Cobalt DRC's Director General Benjamin Katabuka says that's something they've been asked to do by Congo's government.
This country needs more investment in exploration, and we need the data to be available to the public to make that happen.
But the Belgian museum, backed by Belgian authorities, has refused. It says it already has a separate project with Congo to digitize the data, backed by the European Union. Francois Kervin, head of the African Museum's Earth Sciences Department, said Cobalt's proposal to digitize the complete set of archives was not possible.
It's not acceptable that we put all this information in the private sector. We are a public institution, so we are dealing with other public institutions, and in this case, we are establishing a cooperation or collaboration with the Ministry of Mine in DRC.
Belgium's King Leopold II seized Congo in 1885 for his personal enrichment. The territory was plundered and the population subjected to extreme brutality.
That's how we wrap up today's edition of the Africa Roundup. It comes after the 6 a.m. news here on Rise and Shine, so be sure to catch another edition on Monday next week.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Historia msikilizaji ya Valentine Day au siku ya wapendanao ilianzia katika nyakati za kale za dola la Roma. Watafiti wengi wa historia wanaamini kuwa siku hii inahusishwa na sherehe za kipagani zilizokuwa zikifanyika kila mwaka katikati ya mwezi Februari. Msikilizaji, sherehe hizo zilijulikana kama Lupercalia na zilifanyika kuadhimisha uzazi, upendo na mwanzo wa majira ya kuchipua.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Let's begin now with this story, the trial of Bellarmine Mugabe, who's the son of the late former Zimbabwean president Robert Mugabe, and his co-accused Tobias Matonodze, was postponed again to next week after a power outage at the Alexandra Magistrate Court in Johannesburg, South Africa, marking the second delay this week. Now, the pair are facing charges of attempted murder, obstruction of justice, and also violating immigration laws. Parliament has called on Justice Minister Mamoloko Kubai to explain the court's deteriorating conditions. Calvin Mabasa has more.
The Portfolio Committee on Justice says it will urgently summon Minister Mamoloko Kubai to address the ongoing infrastructure failures at courts around the country, including the Alexandra Magistrates Court. The committee has also criticized the poor conditions outside the court. Several cases have been postponed or rescheduled since Monday, potentially adding to an already growing backlog. Parliament Justice Committee member Glenis Breitenberg.
We'll have a discussion with the chairperson of our Portfolio Committee. We'll call the minister urgently, and this isn't the only court that has a generator with no fuel. So either the generator is broken or there's no fuel, which is not helpful. You may as well not have a generator. So, and the courts cannot constantly be postponing matters for weeks, because to find another court date now, it's not going to happen today or tomorrow. It's going to happen in weeks' time.
The power outages at the Alexandra Magistrates Court has yet again resulted in the postponement of a case involving Bellarmine Mugabe and his co-accused Tobias Matonodze. Mugabe's legal representative Sinentla Ntlamguni says the defense has been ready to proceed with the matter since last week.
It's quite disappointing. As I stated on Tuesday, we've been ready to proceed. We've been ready to proceed as far back as Monday last week, but of course we understand these things are out of our hands. We had spoken to the prosecution with regards to the procession of this matter, and it seems that at this stage, we will be back in court on Wednesday next week. We hope that, of course, the electricity will be restored at that point.
The two accused will be back in the Alexandra Magistrates Court on the 11th of March 2026. Calvin Mabasa, SABC News in Alexandra Magistrates Court, Johannesburg.
Iran's ambassador to South Africa, Mansour Shakib Mehr, warns that the escalating Middle East conflict risks setting a reckless precedent with severe, unpredictable consequences for global stability. He addressed the media at the Iranian embassy in Pretoria, South Africa, covering various aspects of the regional crisis and called for support for Iran's national security and sovereignty. Bonolo Maribe compiled this report.
Tensions are soaring as the United States and Israel continue airstrikes on Iran, with explosions rocking Tehran. Iranian state media reports that more than 1,000 people have been killed since the conflict began. The assassination of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei by the US and Israel has intensified the crisis. Ambassador Mansour Shakib Mehr called it dangerous, affirming Iran's right to self-defense.
In light of this aggressive action, the Islamic Republic of Iran reaffirms its inherent and lawful right to self-defense under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. The exercise is carried out within the framework of international law and for the protection of national security and sovereignty. The armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran, supported by the people, are fully prepared to defend the nation.
Mehr reiterated that, in retaliation, Iran is targeting only US military bases in neighboring countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Lebanon, and the United Arab Emirates.
اقدام ما علیه کشورهای همسایه اقدام علیه حاکمیت ملی اونها نیست.
Our act against military bases in our region is not against their sovereignty.
ما توضیح دادیم براشون که برای ما قابل قبول نیست از خاک اونها علیه کشور ما اقدامی بشه.
We described them that it's unacceptable to receive military attacks from their soil against our sovereignty.
البته ما پایگاه‌های آمریکا در کشورهای همسایه رو خاک امریکا تلقی می‌کنیم نه خاک کشورهای همسایه.
Of course, in our mind, the military bases of US in our neighboring countries are soil of USA, not our neighboring.
The ambassador called on countries worldwide to condemn the US and Israel.
البته ما ملاحظات دوستان خودمون رو درک می‌کنیم.
Actually, we understand the considerations of our friends.
اما انتظار داریم همه کشورها برای صلح تلاش بکنن.
But we expect all the countries to try to reach peace.
به متجاوز فشار بیارن.
To make pressure on the oppressor.
تا حملات خودش رو متوقف کنه.
To stop its attack.
He stressed that Iran does not seek military aid.
ما تا کنون کمک نظامی از کشوری درخواست نکردیم.
Up to now, we have not asked for military help from any country.
چون فکر میکنیم خودمون میتونیم از مردممون دفاع بکنیم.
Because we believe that we ourselves can support our people.
Meanwhile, Iran has reportedly targeted the headquarters of Iranian Kurdish forces in Iraqi Kurdistan with 3 missiles. The strikes follow speculation that the US may be urging those groups in Iraq to act against Tehran. Bonolo Maripe, SABC News, Pretoria.
And still with Iran, the World Health Organization has raised its concerns on the conflict in the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Middle East that has affected 16 countries now. The organization has revealed that there were 13 verified attacks on healthcare facilities in Iran and 1 in Lebanon. Now, the threat of nuclear facilities being impacted is also concerning to the world body, warning that any compromise to nuclear safety could be serious in terms of public health consequences.
The conflict in the Middle East has resulted in almost 2,000 deaths and displacements. So far, nearly 100,000 people have left Iran. In Lebanon, more than 60,000 people have been displaced, while 1 million people may be on the move following evacuation orders in the south. The conflict has also affected healthcare in these areas, with the World Health Organization reporting attacks on healthcare workers. The organization says under international humanitarian law, healthcare must be protected and not attacked. The Director General of the organization, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, revealed this in a press conference in Geneva.
WHO is working closely with our offices in the affected countries to monitor the impact on the delivery of health services and provide support when needed and requested. But the impact goes beyond the immediately affected countries. Operations at WHO's logistics hub for global health emergencies in Dubai are currently on hold due to insecurity.
Meanwhile, WHO's regional director for the Eastern Mediterranean, Dr. Hanan Balkhi, mentions that in Lebanon, evacuation orders have forced the closure of 43 primary healthcare centers and 2 hospitals.
Violence has also affected the first responders, with paramedics killed and injured. At all times and in all places, health workers, patients, and health facilities must be protected, even in war.
Balkhi adds that last year, WHO's Global Health Emergencies Logistic Hub in Dubai fulfilled more than 500 emergency orders for 75 countries across all 6 WHO regions. However, humanitarian health supplies are now being jeopardized. The hub's operations are temporarily on hold due to insecurity and airspace closures.
This disruption is preventing access to $18 million in humanitarian health supplies, while another $8 million in shipments cannot reach the hub. More than 50 emergency supply requests from 25 countries are currently affected, and $6 million in medicines for Gaza and $1.6 million in polio laboratory supplies are also held up.
Meanwhile, the organization has further mentioned that half of the global humanitarian needs are concentrated in the Eastern Mediterranean region. They are currently coordinating the health response across all affected countries, supporting ministries of health and partners to sustain essential services, as well as strengthening disease surveillance and preparing for potential mass casualties and displacements. For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Right, it's 28 minutes past 6 Central African time. Now, one of the things that concern me, and we should think about a little bit more actually, we don't give ourselves enough credit, Asanda, about the things that we invented and the things that came out of Africa first, because the world narrative has always been around we follow, we beg, we borrow, etc., etc. But I want to tell our listeners today that one of the earliest known mathematical tools in human history was discovered in Central Africa. Yeah, the Ishango bone found near Lake Edward in what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo is believed to be more than 20,000 years old. Now, this bone contains a series of carefully carved notches that many researchers believe represent early counting or mathematical calculations, and it suggests that complex numerical thinking may have actually originated in Africa long before similar evidence appeared elsewhere in the world.
I thought you were going to say it was found in Egypt somewhere.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I hope it's here and it's not in Germany or France or wherever.
In fact, that's a good thing. I must actually find out exactly where it is. But it was found at Lake Edward in the DRC. I hope it is still in the continent. But it just goes to show, I mean, if you think about Mapungubwe, Great Zimbabwe, the engineering to build structures like that without cement, and they're still standing to this day, is remarkable. So, no, we must stand up and walk tall, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we get our news headlines now. It's 6:30 Central African time. Here's Matapelo Mahape.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Headlines this hour. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is travelling to the US to attend the homegoing celebration for the late Reverend Jesse Jackson in Chicago. He is said to speak at the event requested by Jackson's family. The ceremony is preceded by a public event today attended by Democratic Party leaders. And leader of Zambia's Democratic Party has called on politicians to refrain from exploiting the postponed burial of former President Edgar Lungu for political gains. And a coalition of more than 20 states led by Democratic state attorneys general are suing the Trump administration, challenging a new 15% tariff imposed on countries around the world. More details on these and other stories at top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Right, it's time to rise and shine in the world of sport. And on a Friday, there's always great anticipation about the weekend ahead. So let's find out what we can look forward to and what's been happening overnight with Figile Lingwati. Good morning.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Peter. We begin with the cricket news. Jacob Bethel's magnificent maiden century came in a losing cause as India beat England by 7 runs in a pulse-hitting T20 World Cup semi-final match at the Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai on Thursday. Bethel's 105 from just 48 balls bedrocked England's total of 246 for 7, but Sanju Samson earlier smashed an imperious 89 from just 42 balls to spearhead India's daunting total of 253 for 7 after being asked to bat first, and it was, in the end, just enough for victory. England required an unlikely 39 from the final 2 overs, and a flurry of boundaries made the result look closer than the reality. India, hosts and defending champions, were always one step ahead. They will now meet New Zealand in the final at the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad on Sunday. And the head coach of the South Africa's women national cricket team, Mandla Mashimbi, has given what he believes is a fair rating for his team after a busy schedule during the home summer, which included both T20 International and the One Day International, the ODI series, against Ireland and Pakistan. South Africa faced the Irish back in December and beat them in both formats. And while they also won their series against Pakistan recently, the blemish was not being able to whitewash their opponents in both 50 and 20 overs. Mashimbi says the numbers in the stands are a testimony to how well they've done and gave them an 80% pass mark.
No, I'll give it an 8. I think we've been good. We've played some really good cricket. I think how the people attend our games is a testament to how well we're playing, and people have been really, really supportive. And what the gains and the improvement, therefore, I think that's what makes me give it an 8, because I've seen players grow. And as you mentioned earlier, there's different players putting their hand up with performances with the bat and also with the ball, bringing in youngsters and making an impact.
On to football news. The Confederation of African Football, CAF, has postponed the 2026 Women's Africa Cup of Nations, WAFCON, to July and August of this year. In October 2024, CAF granted the hosting rights for the WAFCON to Morocco, and this tournament was scheduled for the 17th of March to the 3rd of April 2026. After discussions between CAF and its partners, FIFA and other stakeholders, CAF has decided to reschedule the dates of WAFCON 2026 to the 25th of July to the 16th of August 2026 to ensure the success of this important women's competition in the light of certain unforeseen circumstances. Preparations for the WAFCON 2026 are underway, and all the parties are confident that it will be very successful. On to motor racing. The 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton says he does not want to retire from Formula One until he can race in a Grand Prix in Africa. Hamilton says he has been fighting in the background for the past 6 or 7 years. Hamilton's F1's first black driver, with a father of Afro-Caribbean background and a white mother, says he knew F1 bosses were really trying to arrange a race on the continent. However, there is no imminent prospect of one appearing on the schedule, and the chances of there being a race in Africa before the end of this decade are low. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Coming up on Rise and Shine, we take a look at the 5th edition of the Standard Bank Africa Trade Barometer. Now, this barometer looks at 10 African markets. We'll find out what it says about those markets.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. Africa is changing and the world is paying attention. This March, Channel Africa invites you to be part of a new conversation. Africa Matters. A platform where experts, policymakers, and thought leaders come together to unpack the big issues of our time. Technology, politics, economics, climate change, and the future of our people. This is where ideas meet action, where change becomes opportunity, where Africa's voice takes its rightful place on the global stage. In March 2026, Channel Africa hosts Africa Climate Change Recovery Summit. Join the dialogue. Be part of the movement. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Let's help you rise and shine by bringing you the latest from the world of business, and to update us is Tabiso Lehoku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and a very good morning. The President of the Central African Republic, Faustin Archange Touadera, has asked Russian President Vladimir Putin to help the country tackle serious energy problems. The two leaders met in Moscow, where Touadera thanked Putin for donating Russian grain and fuel, adding that his country is looking for further support. Russia is working to increase its influence and economic ties in Africa as part of a wider strategy to strengthen relationships with the developing countries following its rupture with most of the West because of the war in Ukraine. Volkswagen South Africa is recalling over 25,700 VW Polo vehicles sold between February 2025 and February this year. The National Consumer Commission has confirmed that the recall is to correct the handbrake fittings. The NCC says the handbrake may pose a safety risk, particularly when the vehicle is parked. The vehicle manufacturer is advising owners of the affected vehicles to take precautionary measures when parked until it has been inspected. VWSA says any inspection and associated repairs will be done at no cost to the vehicle owners. NCC spokesperson Petron Daba.
They have also informed the NCC that the recall is due to a rivet height on the handbrake lever. Basically, they say it was fitted it is outside the specification, and therefore this could actually mean that the handbrake may not engage properly, or could in rare cases disengage unexpectedly. This is a safety concern, as this may actually pose safety risk, particularly when the vehicle is parked on an incline.
South Africa's Gauteng provincial government is ramping up its efforts to attract $12 billion investments over the coming months as it positions the province as Africa's premier investment hub. The province's Growth and Development Agency, GDA, has partnered with the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry to host a strategic value proposition event in Johannesburg. WGDA Head of Investment Marcus Balisu presented the targeted high-growth sectors.
Energy, which many of the companies will be locating in the special economic zones that the province already has. And we are also, in terms of transportation and logistics, the manufacturing sector, ICT and digital services, tourism, agro-processing. We have three of the biggest markets, fresh produce markets in the country. Tshwane in the north, we have in the east, we have the Springs, we have Joburg market in the dryland port. Automotive, aerospace and defense, and they're quite strategically located as well.
Cape Town Tourism in South Africa says that the ongoing attacks in the Middle East have had a negative impact on tourism in the city. CEO Enver Domini says that the attacks have affected major gateways such as Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Doha, which bring international tourists to the city. Domini says that this has resulted in the decline of global connectivity and tourism opportunities.
What should be noted is that grounded aircraft are extremely costly for airlines, which increases pressure across the entire system. And I believe that travelers should be prepared for potentially higher ticket prices, as fuel costs are rising sharply due to the instability in the region. Our advice to travelers is simple: check directly with your airline before heading to the airport, and be prepared for possible delays, rerouting or fare changes as airlines adapt to the evolving situation. From a tourism perspective, Cape Town remains open and welcoming. We will continue to work closely with our airlines and other partners to keep visitors informed and supported.
India is in talks with the United States to secure marine cover for vessels shipping oil from the Middle East. This as New Delhi seeks to shield buyers from potential supply disruptions caused by a crisis in the Gulf. U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation to provide political risk insurance and financial guarantees for maritime trade in the Gulf. He also says that the U.S. Navy could begin escorting vessels through the Strait of Hormuz, which is the narrow shipping lane between Iran and Oman, through which around a fifth of global oil and gas supplies normally pass. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 379. In Botswana, it's at 13 pula 24. Kenya, 128 shilling 177. In Zambia, 19 kwacha 124. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar is trading at 5 roll 24. Russia, 77 rubles 749. India, 92 rupees 128. China, 61.90. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 16 rand 41 cents. 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Gold $5,163, while platinum is at $2,155 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $83.44 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabiso Lohoko.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Trade-enabling infrastructure across African markets is showing broad improvement, while business confidence and macroeconomic stability are strengthening across the continent. This is according to the 5th edition of the Standard Bank Africa Trade Barometer, which covers 10 African markets. Here's Tuto Ngobeni with more.
The 5th edition of the survey, which covers Angola, Ghana, Kenya, Mozambique, Namibia, Nigeria, South Africa, Tanzania, Uganda, and Zambia, found that firms are reporting improvements across all major infrastructure categories for the first time since the barometer's launch in 2022. Philip Mayberg, head of trade for business at Standard Bank, says 70% of respondents surveyed in the barometer are small-medium enterprises.
It's a barometer that we launched initially in 2022, and it's come on leaps and bounds since that first data set. We now have an incredibly rich data set, not just combining the quantitative element of data points from the likes of the World Bank and the IMF that covers the macroeconomic component, but very, very importantly, what businesses on the continent are saying. So we surveyed 2,218 businesses in this issue across 10 sub-Saharan African markets, which represents nearly 70% of sub-Saharan Africa's GDP. 70% of these respondents are SMEs. And this is important because it really allows us to understand what small businesses on the continent are saying as it relates to trade, and which means it's very different often in some of the trends that we're picking up and some of the observations that people might see.
The barometer also included the African Continental Free Trade Area, or AFCFTA, a significant trade agreement aimed at enhancing economic integration across Africa, which Mayberg says the SMEs surveyed understand the vision of this trading pact.
Yes, so the AFCFTA is definitely a theme that we cover in this barometer, directly and indirectly. And I'll start with the indirect piece because it's really important. We all know that infrastructure is a real enabler for trade, and historically has acted more as a constraint than an enabler to trade, especially as it relates to intra-Africa trade. The barometer is showing us businesses on the continent are saying infrastructure is improving across the board, whether it's road, rail, air, port. All infrastructure and these elements are improving. 7 out of 10 markets, in fact, cited an increase in infrastructure across the board, which is hugely encouraging. As it relates to the AFCFTA, of course, that's important because the AFCFTA's ambitions is to drive more intra-Africa trade, and to drive more intra-Africa trade, we need appropriate infrastructure. As it relates to awareness of the AFCFTA, that also continues to improve. At this point in time, 50% of our respondents were firmly aware of what the AFCFTA is, what the vision is, what they're trying to achieve.
In regard to climate change, Mayberg says the respondents have admitted that severe weather has had a negative impact on their businesses.
Climate change is certainly a theme that came through in the barometer. We found that 38% of firms, in fact, said that they observed a change in behavior of their clients due to climate change. 32% cited loss of productivity due to climate change. 23% of surveyed businesses cited physical damage to assets or a supply chain. So it is a real risk, it is a real challenge that businesses are dealing with.
Commenting on the impact of wars happening outside the African continent as the world observes the unfolding war between Iran, Israel, and the United States, head of business and commercial banking for Africa regions and offshore at Standard Bank Group, Andrew Mashanda, says it's an opportunity for the continent to reposition itself.
But unfortunately, these wars that are taking place have a huge impact on our planning, our thinking, and to a great extent, I believe, create an opportunity for us to rethink our positioning, rethink the way we look at ourselves.
Mashanda further says the building of roads within the continent creates an economy driven by SMEs.
But some people might say, oh, but why are we spending so much money in infrastructure? I will tell you why. The real case for infrastructure for us is, I travel a lot across the continent. When you build the road in Africa, you create an economy. And that economy that's created along the sides of that road is done by small to medium-sized enterprises. And in most cases, it's young people and women that are actually driving that growth. And you see this picture everywhere. You can see a bush today, a road tomorrow, and a thriving economy the year after. That's the power of the entrepreneurial spirit you have on the African continent.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongo Beni in Johannesburg.
Children rights.
Now, as South Africa observes Human Rights Month, child welfare organizations are warning that many children in the country are still growing up in difficult and unsafe conditions. Save the Children South Africa launched a campaign called Right to Childhood and Protection, urging stronger action to tackle violence, hunger and neglect affecting young people. The organisation says that protecting children must become priority not only for government, but also for communities and society as a whole. Our reporter Lebahang Mabange has more.
As South Africa reflects on human rights and the values of dignity, equality and justice, child rights organizations say many children are still being left behind. Megan Beda, Director of Programs at Save the Children South Africa, says the campaign is meant to remind the country that children's rights are human rights.
Human Rights Month reminds us that dignity, safety and equality are rights guaranteed to every person in South Africa, including children. Yet the reality is that many children are growing up in an environment marked by violence, hunger and neglect. Launching the campaign now is about reminding the country that children's rights are human rights and that protecting childhood must become a national priority. We hope this campaign shifts the conversation from awareness to action.
The organization says that the challenges facing children are deeply rooted in broader social issues affecting many communities.
The main drivers behind challenges facing children in South Africa are high levels of poverty and food insecurity. This means that many children are growing up hungry, while violence in the home and communities expose them to abuse and trauma. Systems meant to protect children, like social services, are often overstretched. The result is a cycle where poverty, violence and neglect reinforce each other and rob children of the safe childhood they deserve.
Save the Children South Africa says protecting children cannot be left to government alone and requires collective action from society.
We are calling on communities and the public to take action. Protecting children starts with everyday actions. Communities can report abuse or neglect when they see it, support families who may be struggling, and make sure children in their neighborhoods are safe and cared for. People can also support organizations working with children. Simple acts like monthly donations, joining the Woolworths loyalty program, or simply by helping amplify children's voices by talking about these issues. Child protection is not only the responsibility of the government, it is a shared responsibility for all of us.
The organization hopes the campaign will spark greater public engagement and stronger commitments to protecting children across the country.
Success would mean that more South Africans are talking about this crisis facing children and recognizing that childhood must be protected. We want to see stronger public awareness, more community involvement in protecting children, and greater commitment from our leaders and businesses to prioritize child protection services and funding for this cause. If this campaign helps shift the national mindset so that violence, hunger, and neglect against children are no longer tolerated, and corporates and communities stand with and support Save the Children South Africa, then we will have taken an important step forward.
The Right to Childhood and Protection campaign will run until the end of April, with the organization encouraging South Africans to help raise awareness and take action to protect children. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Get in touch with us with your thoughts and questions about our programming. You can find us on Facebook, that social media platform. Our handle there is Channel Africa. And then across the other social media platforms of X, Instagram, TikTok and LinkedIn, we are at Channel Africa 1.
Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
The governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Olayemi Cardoso, says the surge to stronger external fundamentals and a series of policy reforms have helped restore confidence in the currency market. He noted that the improvement reflects increased foreign exchange inflows, more effective reserves management, and a renewed capacity to meet external obligations.
The larger foreign reserves is super good for considering the number of volume of
foreign transactions that is being done by Nigeria. So it's a good indication. A second one is that it also gives the country an opportunity to be able to access the foreign reserves when they need it for maybe urgent, maybe infrastructural or any kind of developmental project.
Dennis O'Shea, a certified financial modeling and valuation analyst.
Bringing the African markets into your home. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The 2026 Africa Energy Indaba enters its final day in Cape Town, South Africa, with discussions continuing to focus on building energy systems that are sustainable, affordable and resilient, while ensuring the energy transition creates meaningful jobs and economic opportunities for communities across the continent. Channel Africa's economics reporter Innocent Simosa now looks at how Malawi, Zimbabwe and Namibia are tackling energy poverty as part of broader efforts to align with Africa's energy infrastructure and development ambitions.
The discussion here at the Energy Indaba is focused on Africa's urgent need to end energy poverty, drive investment-led growth, and advance a sustainable and inclusive energy transition. I had a chat with Zimbabwe's Deputy Minister of Energy and Power Development, Yaungaye Simba Nengavi. I began by asking her, with energy access still uneven across the continent, what concrete steps is Zimbabwe taking to address energy poverty in the country? Here's what she had to say.
In terms of policy, because I'm coming in from the government side, yes, we're actually doing quite a lot to make sure that we bridge the energy gap between rural areas and urban areas. We're trying to make sure that currently we have access that is at 62%. We're trying to make sure that by 2030 we go to at least 100%. So in terms of frameworks and policies that we have put together, we have the National Development Strategy 1, which we've transitioned now to the second phase. And this is aimed at making sure that every household has electricity.
Simba Negavi also took some time to outline some of the key obstacles the country faces in expanding energy access.
I would say the challenges that we have right now in Zimbabwe in terms of electricity is finance, because first we want to make sure that we improve our generation capacity. And for us to be able to do this, we need funding. We also need to improve our transmission systems, improve our grid systems, so that we can be able to distribute the energy that we are currently generating, but at the same time also be able to transmit energy coming in from other countries such as South Africa, such as Botswana.
How is Africa addressing the skills gap needed to implement and maintain new energy technologies? Is the continent making steps in the right direction? Dr. Idris Elombo represents Namibia Energy Institute, NUST Namibia.
Well, if it's a question of making steps in the right direction, the answer is yes. And I think it's a good realization that we've come to as a region. And for me, particularly being Namibian, we have really come to realize that there are skills gaps in specific sectors of the energy landscape, particularly the emerging different energy vectors, green hydrogen, and even in the context of a just energy transition, we're also talking of developing our oil and gas, which in Namibia, it's a very nascent field. So we have to start to make progress.
Meanwhile, Malawi says it's doing something about the energy shortage in the country. Maxwell Biwi is the Malawi Consulate General in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Malawi is actually making good strides towards energy area. Our installed capacity at the moment, we're talking about 550 megawatts, and that includes almost 100 megawatts from solar. And as a country, we are doing everything possible to make sure that we drive towards 750 megawatts by 2030.
Like many delegates here, Biwi underscores the importance of private-public partnerships.
We are working very closely with the private sector, and the government is offering quite a number of incentives to the private sector to make sure that we have huge investment in different areas like hydro and green energy. So just to talk about maybe three areas where government is supporting the private sector, it's where we are offering some tax holidays to investors that come to invest into the energy space.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samosa at the 2026 Energy Indaba, Cape Town, South Africa.
It's 7 o'clock Central African time, which means it's time for the second hour of Rise and Shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. So much to come in this hour. We'll tell you more about that. But first, here's the news with Joalane Tulongwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. With the news at 7 o'clock, or rather it's Matapelo Mahabe on the news desk today. Starting off with the story, Zambia's Democratic Party leader, Judith Kabemba, has called on politicians to cease politicizing the prolonged delay in the burial of former President Edgar Lungu, who passed away 9 months ago in South Africa. This is the latest twist over the fate of Lungu's body, which remains in a morgue in South Africa and has been subject to ongoing legal battle between his family and Zambia's government over where he should be buried. Speaking in a video released to ZNBC, she said the country's current president, Hakainde Chimela, is not responsible for the delay.
You cannot continue accusing an innocent person. President Hakainde Hichilema is innocent in this matter. He is not the one that has refused to bury his predecessor. And let me also speak to the fact that some sector of society from the opposition are propagating the idea that President Hakainde Hichilema must recuse himself from attending the burial of the former head of state. That is not possible.
And South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is on his way to the US tonight to attend the home-going celebration of life for the late civil rights icon, Reverend Jesse Jackson, taking place in Chicago tomorrow. The civil rights leader died last month, aged 84. The cause of his death has not been released, but Jackson had been diagnosed with progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP, and was in hospital late last year. Ramaphosa is expected to speak at his funeral as requested by the Jackson family. It will be preceded by a more public homegoing ceremony today, also in Chicago, which is expected to be attended by the Democratic Party leaders in the United States. And conservative Anglicans meeting in Nigeria's capital Abuja have pulled back from creating a new leader with the same authority as Archbishop of Canterbury. Instead, they created a new council headed by a Rwandan cleric, Dr. Laurent Mbanda. Many conservatives are unhappy with the church installing its first woman Archbishop of Canterbury, Sarah Mulele. Later this month, the BBC's Justin Murphy is the group's spokesperson.
The issue is not same-sex marriage, nor is it about the female archbishop. It is whether scripture or contemporary culture governs the life of this church. The reordering recovers the original Anglican structure, a fellowship of independent provinces under scripture, free from colonial, Canterbury-centered history.
And suspended South African Police Services head of organised crime, General Richard Chibiri, returned to the stand at the Madlanga Commission today to face a cross-examination. General Chibiri has testified about his relationship with attempted murderer accused Vusmusi Ket Matlala. The commission is probing criminal infiltration and political interference in the country's criminal justice system. Chibiri told the commission that he met Matlala in 2016 and connected with him again in 2024. He also testified that Matlala borrowed him about $4,000 to fix his son's car. Sibahle Mota reports.
General Shibiri told the commission that Ket Matlala lent him the money to fix his son's vehicle. This was after his son was involved in an accident. General Shibiri testified that he paid Matlala back in 2 installments. The first was a 20,000 rands deposit, while the other was a 50,000 rands payment. He says the money was used solely for the vehicle repairs and was in no way connected to his official duties as a police officer. Shibiri is one of the top police officials who have been accused of being in bed with alleged criminal syndicates. Proceedings begin at 9:30 a.m.
And US President Donald Trump says he needs to be personally involved in selecting Iran's next leader. He told the Axios News website that he thinks Iran's Islamic leadership will choose Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of assassinated supreme leader, to replace him. But Trump says that would be unacceptable. Iranian clerics have not yet announced their choice to replace Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Meanwhile, explosions have again been heard in various locations across Iran's capital, Tehran. The BBC's Hugo Bechega has the details.
In Iran, the United States and Israel have intensified their airstrikes targeting a number of cities and places across the country. There have been reports of massive explosions in Tehran. In Isfahan, we've heard eyewitnesses describe a terrifying situation with dozens of civilians killed in one particular area of the city. And in Iran, the authorities are saying that more than 1,200 people have been killed since Saturday.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Matapelo Mahape.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
A sports headline. Dean Burmester is happy to lead Southern Guards charge at Live Hong Kong. And Samson helps India into the T20 final with tight win over England. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine. Every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
We now enter the second hour of Rise and Shine. Good morning to you from me, Asanda, Beda, and Peter Ndoro. That's the duo that drives the show. And we've got a number of stories to look at in this hour. We'll get to that in just a bit. Do stay connected to Africa and the world with Channel Africa, the international voice of the South African Broadcasting Corporation. You can watch us or listen live anytime, anywhere on our website. That's channelafrica.co.za, on Channel Africa mobile app and the SABC Plus app. Or you can also tune in via DSTV and OpenView audio bouquets. We are on social media. On Facebook, find us as Channel Africa. And then on the other social media platforms of X, of LinkedIn, of TikTok, of Instagram and YouTube, we are at Channel Africa 1. Channel Africa, first with the African story globally. And one of those stories that we'll be looking at is Human Rights Watch. They've raised serious concerns over a call by the Israeli military for the immediate evacuation of civilians from areas south of the Litani River. And of course, this is as the escalation of violence happens in the Middle East and uncertainty as well. And then also we've been saying today is Independence Day for Ghana. So we'll be going to talk about that story. And this is a day of immense pride, not only for the people of Ghana, but for millions of Ghanaians living around the world. On the 6th of March in 1957, Ghana became the first sub-Saharan African country to gain independence from colonial rule. What are the Ghanaians reflecting on this day? How far has the country come in terms of its plans, I guess, for its people? We'll be discussing all of those types of things or topics or points, rather.
The safety and well-being of learners is a shared social responsibility. Parents and guardians play a critical role in ensuring safe, reliable, and lawful scholar transport. Parents are therefore urged to take responsibility for the following. Learners should be encouraged to report unsafe driving, overcrowding, or any dangerous practices both before and during the journey. Promoting safe boarding, respectful conduct, and responsible behavior during the journey is a collective duty that begins at home. By working together, parents, operators, and authorities can protect learners and build a culture of safety on our roads. Issued by the National Department of Transport.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Historia msikilizaji ya Valentine Day au siku ya wapendanao ilianzia katika nyakati za kale za dola la Roma. Watafiti wengi wa historia wanaamini kuwa siku hii inahusishwa na sherehe za kipagani zilizokuwa zikifanyika kila mwaka katikati ya mwezi Februari. Msikilizaji, sherehe hizo zilijulikana kama Lupercalia na zilifanyika kuadhimisha uzazi, upendo na mwanzo wa majira ya kuchipua.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Human Rights Watch has raised serious concerns over a call by the Israeli military for the immediate evacuation of civilians from areas south of the Litani River. The order affects hundreds of thousands of people in southern Lebanon and warns that anyone moving south could be putting their lives at risk. Rights groups say such sweeping evacuation calls could violate international humanitarian law, particularly if they result in forced displacement or fail to account for vulnerable civilians, such as the elderly, the sick, and people with disabilities. So for more on this, we're joined now by Lama Faki, who is a Global Program Director at Human Rights Watch and joining us from Beirut. Lama, thank you for your time. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So let's begin with the evacuation order itself. Why does Human Rights Watch see this call as raising serious concerns under international humanitarian law?
Thank you. And after we saw that evacuation order on March 4th, there was a second evacuation order for an area totaling around 22 kilometers squared in the Beirut suburbs, where an additional 700,000 people are estimated to live. So what we have seen is in the context of 2 days, nearly 1 million people residing in areas where these evacuation warnings have been issued. Now, under international law, it is a war crime to forcibly displace a civilian population. Civilians can be evacuated in very limited circumstances, in circumstances where it is necessary for their own security or where it is necessary for an imperative military objective. What our concern is with these orders and the manner in which they have been given, calling on, again, hundreds of thousands of people to leave immediately, that it does not actually afford people an opportunity to safely flee. And of course, we will know that there will be people who are unable to leave. And for those civilians, their protected status under international law does not change. They cannot be subjected to attack simply because they continue to reside in an area where there has been an evacuation warning issued.
The order affects hundreds of thousands of people across southern Lebanon. From where you're standing, what are the practical challenges that this can create for civilians who are being asked to leave immediately?
These orders have created a humanitarian crisis in the country. Again, in a matter of days, we have seen hundreds of thousands of people displaced from their homes. They are urgently seeking accommodation. These people, in many cases, are not able to pursue their livelihoods. They are not sure how they're going to be able to support themselves and their families in the days and weeks to come, unsure when they may be able to return to the areas where they are from. So, of course, there was a responsibility on local authorities to assist in the response, and there will be an increasing demands on humanitarian actors in the country to try to meet the needs of the population. And again, the warring parties here have an obligation to not undertake their attacks in a way that is doing undue harm to the civilian population. They must take adequate precautions to protect civilians, and civilians are entitled to the basic necessities, even in the context of displacement.
We've spoken generally about the risks that the humanitarian risks that people generally of southern Lebanon are facing. But what are the unique dangers that each of these groups are facing in this situation? We mentioned the elderly, the sick, and people living with disabilities, these groups.
So one of the things that we saw yesterday with the evacuation order of the southern suburbs of Beirut is that hospitals also had to be evacuated. We know that people's ability to seek care from their providers is disrupted. So people who have chronic illnesses may have a more difficult time in being able to access the kinds of treatments and medications that they depend upon to live. When people's livelihoods are also disrupted, their ability to care for themselves and their families, of course, is encumbered. Children across the country have also been denied their access to education this past week. Schools have been closed. It's unclear how long that closure is going to persist. And of course, for people that have physical disabilities, it can be incredibly difficult to respond to these evacuation warnings. Some of the warnings that have been issued have also been issued in the middle of the night. And imagine, having a disability that limits you physically in a context where you're being asked to flee immediately without any assistance and in the middle of the night. So these are the kinds of obstacles that people are facing, everyday people just trying to manage in the context of these ongoing and escalating hostilities in the country.
So let's talk about the definitions there. Under international law, when is an evacuation considered lawful, and then when does it become a forced displacement?
So warnings can and should be issued to a civilian population when that is done to ensure their security. But they should not be issued in a way that seeks to terrorize or to collectively punish a population. And again, the forced displacement of a civilian population under the laws of war is a violation. It can amount to a war crime. Civilians should only be displaced when it is required for their own security or for a specific imperative military need. And those are defined and limited exceptions to the broader rule that the civilians should not be displaced. So again, the context of these warnings, 48 hours, nearly 1 million people, broad residential areas, it raises serious concerns about their compliance with international law, and more importantly, serious concerns about protection of civilians, the ability of people to remain safe, the ability of people to actually comply with what are very sweeping and immediate evacuation warnings.
So what steps does Human Rights Watch hope to see then from the international community as well as the Lebanese authorities to ensure that civilians are protected and that there is some level of accountability here?
So we saw on March 5th, Israeli Minister Smotrich made a public statement where he said that the Beirut suburbs would become like Khan Yunis. And the implications of his statement are clear. That the Beirut suburbs will be destroyed. And the question really remains, how will other states act? Overnight, we saw that there was extensive bombings in the Beirut suburbs. We still need to assess the full extent of that damage. What are other states doing to de-escalate the situation in a way that would ensure that civilians are protected and that the parties are complying with their obligations under international humanitarian law? We are urging them to do so, not just in words, but also in actions, condemning attacks that violate the basic principles of civilian protection under international law, and ensuring that steps are taken to care for the civilian population.
Right, and one can imagine that that's necessary because many civilians in Lebanon were already displaced by previous hostility. So you can only imagine how this latest evacuation then affects the situation even more.
That's right. We did see in 2024 that over 1 million people were displaced. Some of them remained displaced even though we were in a ceasefire period. During the ceasefire period as well, Lebanon continued to be subjected to attacks, in some cases attacks that also were affecting civilian life. killing and injuring civilians. Right now, attention has to be on the compliance of the warring parties in the laws of war. Civilians should never be targeted. Civilians must be protected under the law.
Absolutely. Lama, thank you so much. We'll leave it there for today. We appreciate your time again.
Thank you.
Lama Fakir is Global Program Director at Human Rights Watch, speaking to us from Beirut.
Across Africa, communities rise with the promise of clean water and clean sanitation. The African Union's 2026 theme calls us to action.
It's about mobilizing real commitments, securing climate-resilient water and sanitation projects, and ensuring that water becomes a driver of sustainable development and prosperity across the continent.
A landmark moment, not only for Africa, but for the global movement for access to safe water for all.
Assuring sustainable water availability for every home, every village, every nation. This is the Africa we want.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Stella Longwe, Pamalonje.
Ndiyetu apa tindikatswiri oimba wa dziko la Mozambique ameneyu amene ali Harikabana. Ndatiuzeni kuti maimba ashamba shanji komanso dzina lanu lenileni kuoneka ngati dzina limeneli ndilijatu atapa stage. Dzina lanu kwenikweni ndi ndani komanso maimba ashamba shanji?
Ineyo dzina langa lenileni ndine Ricardo Musa Rabana. Chamba chimene ndimaimba ine ndimanganji ndimakonda kwambiri ma tradition. Zimenezo ndi nyimbo zathu chifukwa kwathu kunoko ndi madansi osiyana-siyana achimizi. Ndi ineyo poti ndi mnyamata wa chimizi ndi ndimakondanso nyimbo za chimizi.
Ndinu achimizi? Ndi makondanso nyimbo za chimizi, mapangaso za chimizi. Zosangalatsa kuti mwanena poyera kuti ndinu achimizi. Anthu amazibisa, anthu amafuna kukhala ndithu achitauni. Koma chikhalidwe chilibe chitauni, alisa ndi chikhalidwe chake, alisa ndi zimene amakonda.
Malonje, pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo. Lowiruka ndi Stella Longwe. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
So today marks Independence Day in Ghana, a day of immense pride, not only for the people of Ghana, but also for millions of Ghanaians that are living around the world. On the 6th of March, 1957, Ghana became the first sub-Saharan African country to gain its independence from colonial rule. And that was under the leadership of Kwame Nkrumah. Now, that historic moment helped inspire liberation movements across the African continent, and nearly 7 decades later, the day remains a powerful symbol of national pride, resilience and identity for Ghanaians both at home and in the diaspora. As the country reflects on its journey since independence and looks ahead to the future, we're now joined by His Excellency Benjamin Kwashi, who's Ghana's High Commissioner to South Africa, to discuss why this day remains important for Ghanaians both at home and abroad. High Commissioner, thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Hi, Pete. How are you?
We are good, and congratulations on this special day. And Ghana led the way in so many ways. I wonder, what does the 6th of March still mean to Ghanaians at home and abroad nearly 7 decades later?
Thank you very much, Peter. I think this is significant to Ghanaians because it symbolizes our hard-won freedom. And it's always the national spirit we have to believe that we are able to lead and we are able to do things that would adhere to the benefit of everybody. I think that it's still significant to our people, all of us, because we know what went behind the struggle for independence, what the Osagifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who happened to be our first prime minister and president, go through in ensuring that we have this hard-won freedom. I think also as we honor on that freedom, we reflect so much on the journey and towards progress. Over the years, there have been successive governments that have done what is necessary under the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana to ensure that we develop and develop strategically. We develop and develop with all of us being asked to be part of the journey. I have come to believe that the Independence Day has become very significant to us because it gives us a sense of joy, a sense of pride, and it also enables us to have the vision that our founding fathers and the framers of our Constitution have for us.
The country certainly has been through quite a journey over time, coups along the way. But in the end, I think it's built a reputation as one of the continent's most stable democracies. From your perspective, what do you think has helped shape that strong democratic culture amongst Ghanaians?
I think for us in that aspect, it should be our steadfast commitment to the rule of law. We've come to believe that the rule of law and good governance are very essential components when it comes to ensuring that we remain at that level that we are in the whole of Africa and also in the world. We allow our citizens as Ghanaians to participate in civil society and also the media. The media landscape in Ghana is one that is free. It's one that enables everybody to go about their duties and ensure that as Ghanaians, we don't coerce people into doing what we want to do. The coup d'etats that we've had have shaped our collective results to believe that democracy is the way to go. The rule of law is the way to champion a development. And so we have come to learn from the challenges we had through the coup d'etats, through the economic challenges that we've gone through to be where we are today. Today, I can report to you that the economy of Ghana is doing so well. I can report to you that leadership has been restored. I can report to you that our people are happy. And I can let you also know that we are ready in the Committee of Nations to grow as a people.
When we look at the vision of Kwame Nkrumah back in 1957, he spoke strongly about Pan-African unity. How relevant is that vision, do you think, today, especially as we develop initiatives such as the African Continental Free Trade Area?
I think his belief in the strength of a collective Africa is what has given birth to one of this proud initiative of the AFTA, which is Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Sajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's aim was to see an Africa that was borderless, an Africa that has one voice, an Africa that believes that it can champion the cause of its people collectively. So if you read about the charters that Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who is our first president, worked with, you would see that African unity was one. Africa coming together, cooperating in every other diverse fields that we find ourselves is also another one. What I can say confidently is that it looks like Africa has now taken that route with the African Free Continental Trade Area and other such initiatives. I believe that one thing that the Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah will be proud and happy about is to see an Africa that is borderless. Once we have an Africa that is borderless and our people are able to freely move, freely do economic activities and social activities together, I'm sure that it will be a proud moment for Africa to pat its back and say that we have been able to do it. I'm not saying that because of that, there shouldn't be regulations at our borders and others, but let us make it easier for our brothers and sisters from the African continent to be able to do things freely that would ensure that we develop Africa collectively as a people.
So, as Ghana marks another Independence Day, what's your message that you'd like to share with Africans across the continent about the future of Ghana and also the role that it hopes to play in Africa's development?
I think that as we celebrate our 69th Independence Day today, I want to extend a message of solidarity and collaboration to African nations. I want to say that thank you for believing in Ghana. Thank you for believing that we can champion this goal. thank you for ensuring that in the Committee of Nations, we've all been together, we've all worked together collectively. This Independence Day signifies a very, very important milestone in the history of Ghana. That milestone is about economic emancipation, it's about social cohesion. It is also about us ensuring that as a people, we develop together with the Ghanaian people. His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama, who is the President of Ghana, has indicated that he believes that it is time for us to have a research agenda. It is by no chance that Ghana, as you are aware, has one of the most growing economies in the world. In the last quarter of last year, our currency performed very well. Our economy is doing well as well. We want this to translate into the lives of the ordinary Ghanaian, which is what we believe that the reset agenda that His Excellency has undertaken is what is going to drive this objective. In the wider scale of us dealing with the African people, I want to say that Ghana remains open to our brothers and sisters from the diaspora, to our brothers and sisters from the African continent. Let us come together, work together, and ensure that Africa becomes a better place, just like our founding fathers believed in.
And that's where we'll leave it. High Commissioner, congratulations on your Independence Day. And thank you so much indeed for joining us and sharing this beautiful Ghanaian story with us today.
Thank you very much.
Medasi. And that's Ghana's High Commissioner to South Africa, His Excellency Benjamin Kwashi, speaking to us about Ghana on this special day, their Independence Day that they gained in 1957 on March the 6th. It's 7:30, which means it's time for your news headlines as we say good morning once again to Matapelo Mahape.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Your headlines this hour. Zambia's Democratic Party leader, Judith Kabemba, has called on politicians to cease politicizing the prolonged delay in the burial of former President Edgar Lungu, who passed away 9 months ago in South Africa. And South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa will travel to the U.S. tonight to attend the homegoing celebration of life for the late civil rights icon Reverend Jesse Jackson, taking place in Chicago tomorrow. And Hezbollah has urged Israeli residents to evacuate areas within 5 kilometers of the Lebanese border, warning that Israel's military actions against Lebanese sovereignty and infrastructure will be met with resistance. More details on these and other stories at top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's catch you up with what's happening in the world of sports. Now we say good morning again to Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Asanda. We begin with the golf news. South African golfer and member of the Southern Guards, GC, Dean Burmester, has welcomed the weight that comes with leading the team at Live Hong Kong. Round 1 on Thursday at the Hong Kong Golf Club at the Fenling saw some exciting action as Spaniard Carlos Ortiz of Turkey GC topped the leaderboard at 10 under par 62, with Burmester just 2 shots off the pace in second. The 2-time Live event winner is carrying his SGGC teammates Louise Oosthuizen +1, Charles Schwartzel +1, and Brendan Grace -2 into day 2. But he's confident his promising run can inspire his brothers to improve their scores today.
Look, it's a team sport now, and that's probably the positive part about it. Me having a great day, I know all of those guys, when I see them in a little bit, are going to congratulate me, and we'll probably talk a little bit of golf and a little bit of shop. But there's also the other side of that coin where if they ask for my help, I'll get there and I'll give it to them. We're very close. We're basically 4 brothers because of that fact. I know that the rest of the team didn't do great today, but they'll be pushing because they've seen me do well. They want to help us, get to the top and get a victory. We're not out of it. So for that reason, I'm pretty sure the boys are probably practicing right now.
Reflecting on his overall opening round, Burmy admitted he made a judgment error on the par 4 9th hole, which he ended up bogeying.
It was pretty flawless. I made one, mental error off the tee on 9 where I should have hit a 2-iron instead of a 3-wood and overshot the fairway a little bit, and actually got lucky to make a 5, to be honest. So, but no, I played great from the first tee shot all the way through to the last. I mean, I hardly missed a golf shot, and I left a couple of putts out there, but that's golf, and I'm very proud of the way I kind of just hung together and kept pushing in birdies. I saw a lot of guys making birdies, and I managed to do the same, because normally when that happens you kind of feel like you've got to chase, and I never really felt like I was ever doing that. I just felt like I was within myself. So it's one of those good in the zone days, as they would say.
On to cricket news. Jacob Bethel's magnificent maiden century came in a losing cause as India beat England by 7 runs in a pulsating T20 World Cup semi-final match at the Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai. Bethel's 105 from just 48 balls bedrocked England's total of 246 for 7. But Sanju Samson earlier smashed an imperious 89 from just 42 balls to spearhead India's daunting total of 253 for 7 after being asked to bat first, and it was, in the end, just enough for victory. And finally, motor racing. Valtteri Bottas has escaped a 5-place grid penalty for the season-opening Australian Grand Prix after Formula One's new sporting regulations voided sanctions not served within 12 months. The Finn had been handed the penalty in his final race for Sauber in 2024 after colliding with Kevin Magnussen, but set out last season as Mercedes reserve before joining newcomers Cadillac. He and teammate Sergio Perez are still expected to start near the back in Cadillac's debut, though Aston Martin's struggles could prevent them from being last in qualifying. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Right, coming up shortly is the business news, but I've started a new little feature which I like, and I hope that you're enjoying as well. And I'm going to be sharing with you innovations and some interesting facts about our continent that shows you that we have been at the forefront of many things for centuries. For example, the first known surgical procedure actually took place in ancient Egypt. Ancient Egyptians were among the earliest practitioners of organized medicine and surgery. Medical papyri dating back more than 3,500 years describe surgical procedures, wound treatment, bone setting, and even early forms of anesthesia using herbal mixtures. Egyptian physicians also performed complex procedures such as treating fractures and stitching wounds. Now, these medical texts helped lay the foundations for many modern medical practices. So we've been leading. We really have been pioneering. First surgical procedures, ancient Egyptians practicing those. Coming up shortly, the business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
A very good morning. Angola has received a formal approval from the World Bank and its multilateral investment guarantee agency for crucial financial guarantees that will underpin a debt for education swap the country is lining up to pay for new schools. Debt swaps aim to reduce interest payments so governments can spend more in key areas, and Angola's is set to be only the second the World Bank has backed after its first just over a year ago in Ivory Coast. Angola's government is set to buy back up to $400 million of its most expensive commercial debt using a much lower cost new loan thanks to 2 World Bank and MIGA guarantees that cover the repayments if any problems arise. Section 7 of the Value-Added Tax Act that allows South Africa's Minister of Finance to change the VAT rate has been ruled unconstitutional and invalid in the Western Cape High Court. The Democratic Alliance brought their application last year after a dispute over a proposed 1% VAT increase announced by Finance Minister Inakotongwana in the 2025 budget speech, which was later withdrawn. The court found that it takes 12 months before a parliament can either confirm or reject new VAT rate adjustments proposed by the minister. The court was particularly concerned that if parliament decides after 12 months not to confirm the changes, taxpayers will not be reimbursed. The High Court has asked the Constitutional Court to have the final say in order for the ruling to stand. The High Court maintains that it doesn't oppose delegating legislative authority to the executive, but its primary concern is that VAT time lag of 12 months. Volkswagen South Africa is recalling over 25,700 VW Polo vehicles sold between February 2025 and February this year. The National Consumer Commission, NCC, has confirmed that the recall is to correct the handbrake fittings. The NCC says the handbrake may pose a safety risk, particularly when the vehicle is parked. The vehicle manufacturer is advising owners of the affected vehicles to take precautionary measures when parked until it has been inspected. VWSA says that the inspection and associated repairs will be done at no cost to the vehicle owners. NCC spokesperson Petuntaba.
They have also informed the NCC that the recall is due to a rivet height on the handbrake lever. Basically, they say it was fitted it is outside the specification, and therefore this could actually mean that the handbrake may not engage properly or could, in rare cases, disengage unexpectedly. This is a safety concern, as this may actually pose safety risk, particularly when the vehicle is parked on an incline.
South Africa's Gauteng provincial government is ramping up its efforts to attract $12 billion investments over the coming months as it positions the province as Africa's premier investment hub. The province's Growth and Development Agency, GDA, has partnered with the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry to host a strategic value proposition event in Johannesburg. GDA Head of Investments, Marcus Balisu, presented the targeted high-growth sectors.
Energy, which many of the companies will be locating in the special economic zones that the province already has. And we are also, in terms of transportation and logistics, the manufacturing sector, ICT and digital services, tourism, agro-processing. We have three of the biggest markets, fresh produce markets in the country. Tshwane in the north, we have in the east, we have the Springs, we have Joburg market in the Dryland port. Automotive, aerospace and defense, and they're quite strategically located as well.
The United States has eased its embargo on Russian oil after prices rose because of the Iran war. For the next 30 days, it let India buy Russian oil that's in tankers at sea. The Treasury Secretary said this was to allow oil to continue flowing into the global market. Iranian threats have halted traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, which about 20% of the world's oil passes through. The BBC's Nick Marsh has more.
This is a sign that the White House is trying to do something about the rising price of oil. Whether this will actually make any material difference is a different matter. We actually don't know how this Russian oil will physically be able to get to India and how much Russian oil India has been buying recently. But it is a sign that the White House is concerned. I mean, oil has jumped by more than 20% since the start of this war. It's already translating into prices at the petrol pump.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 379. In Botswana, it's at 13.24. Kenya, 128 shilling, 177. In Zambia, 19 kwacha 124. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 real 24. Russia, 77 rubles 749. India, 92 rupees 128. China, 61.90. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 16 rand 41 cents. 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Commodities markets: gold $5,163, while platinum is at $2,155 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $83.44 a barrel. For any business stories that you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabiso Lohoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Now, the growing global demand for critical minerals essential for technologies such as renewable energy, electric vehicles, and advanced electronics is increasingly shaping international politics and global supply chains. That was the message from a senior official at the United Nations during a recent meeting of the UN Security Council on energy, critical minerals and global security. The discussion examined how competition for strategic natural resources and could influence geopolitical tensions and the maintenance of international peace and security. Now, the Council, currently chaired by the United States, has highlighted the urgency of securing reliable mineral supply chains as countries race to support the global transition. Here's a report by Sherwin Bryce-Beese from New York.
The UN reiterated the view that critical minerals were among the main drivers of the 21st century economy, critical in the manufacture of smartphones, electric vehicles, artificial intelligence, robotics, and the list goes on. With the trade in raw and semi-processed minerals reaching approximately $2.5 trillion in 2023 alone, 1/10 of global trade. Listen to the Under-Secretary General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, Rosemary DiCarlo.
This dramatic rise in demand is a generational opportunity to create jobs, diversify economies, and promote sustainable development. However, the surge in demand for critical minerals is also fueling geopolitical competition and affecting global supply chains. Mining for these minerals has been linked to human rights abuses and environmental degradation. It's incumbent on both producing and consuming countries to enact governance and regulatory frameworks to manage these resources responsibly for the benefit of all.
In highlighting the link between natural resources and conflict, DiCarlo highlighted 3 priorities: the need for the extraction of these resources to deliver just and equitable outcomes, the need for multilateral and regional action to strengthen governance and improve the traceability of minerals to curb illicit flows, and the necessity to deploy peacemaking instruments to mitigate and resolve natural resource disputes.
In conflict-affected contexts, mining, when not managed responsibly, can have a devastating effect. It can weaken governance, spur illicit economies, and fund criminal and armed groups.
The U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright, who chaired the meeting, took aim at climate policies which remain an urgent priority for the UN and governments around the world. As Washington now prioritizes the extraction of fossil fuels, seen as detrimental to climate stability.
In recent years, many governments have adopted aggressive climate policies. These policies, made in the name of climate change, have been unrealistic and poorly planned. The energy delusions implicit in climate policies represent real and growing threats to nations and peoples around the world. Energy is too important, too central to life to get wrong. And it is the same with critical minerals.
The Democratic Republic of Congo, a non-permanent member of the Council, is among those countries deeply intertwined in resource-driven wars, calling the debate one of existential importance. Kinshasa's envoy, Ambassador Zenon Mukongo Ngai.
Alimente des cycles de violence et contribue à l'émergence d'une véritable économie de guerre.
Competition for control of natural resources is fueling cycles of violence and contributing to the emergence of a veritable war economy. Illegal artisanal mining, informal taxation, and also cross-border smuggling networks are allowing some armed groups to finance their activities and to keep drawn-out conflicts burning on. My country is the perfect illustration of this.
China also seen as key to the debate, with a 2023 report by the International Energy Agency pointing to Beijing supplying 60% of rare earth elements globally and calling for the sovereignty of nations to be respected. Ambassador Fu Kong.
一国对境内资源享有绝对主权。
Each country exercises absolute sovereignty over the resources within its territory and bears primary responsibility for its governance. Certain countries should abandon outdated colonialist thinking, fully respect the development path and policy choices of other countries, and engage in business cooperation based on equality and mutual benefit. They must not, for self-interest, seize resources from other countries through various means, even resorting to military force to exert pressure or coercion.
The Secretary-General's high-level panel on critical energy transition minerals, co-chaired by South African diplomat Ambassador Nozipho Mkakato Diseko in 2024, put forward voluntary guiding principles, from human rights and equity to transparency and accountability, that could guide responsible mining and the energy transition. Implementation of those guiding principles remains key as the race and glut for these minerals ensues. I'm Sherman Bryce Pease in New York.
It's the FIFA World Cup countdown. Zanzi, 98 days to go from 11 June to 19 July. Your national broadcaster, the South African Broadcasting Corporation, or SABC, brings you every moment live. Watch on SABC3, stream on SABC Plus, and stay connected on SABC Radio. Download the SABC Plus now and be ready for kickoff. SABC is the official broadcaster of the FIFA World Cup 2026.
When it comes to world-class exhibitions and event solutions, one name leads the way: GL Events South Africa. From concept to completion, we transform ideas into exceptional experiences, delivering seamless events for conferences, exhibitions, business functions, and more. With global expertise and local insight, we provide innovative, sustainable, and turnkey event solutions you can trust. Partner with the industry leader. Partner with GL Events South Africa. Visit gl-events.co.za.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
New research from the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime shows that at least 30% of Europe's cocaine passes through West Africa, while synthetic drug markets are expanding and diversifying, creating serious challenges for public health, security, and governance. Joining us to explain these findings is Lucia Bird, one of the authors of the report. And director of the Observatory of Illicit Economies in West Africa at the GITOC, who has led research into trafficking routes, criminal networks, and emerging synthetic drug markets. Lucia, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you, as one of the authors of this report, explain the key findings that you would highlight for our listeners about cocaine and synthetic drug markets when it comes to West Africa?
The illicit drugs landscape in West Africa has been fundamentally reshaped by a surge in the manufacture, traffic, and consumption of synthetic drugs. The drugs market has rapidly diversified, and we're seeing a widening range of substances available, including synthetic opioids, which are powerful, highly addictive, and can be deadly. And this is occurring in parallel to a fast-paced expansion of the transshipment of cocaine from Latin America on its way largely to Europe, as well as other regions.
What about West Africa makes it a hub for these trafficking routes? Your research shows that at least 30% of Europe's cocaine passes through this region.
Firstly, the geographic location of West Africa between cultivating areas in Latin America and consumption markets in Europe, which have grown over recent years and been extremely profitable. But also the investment in the transport infrastructure in West Africa, which has grown roads, has really supported a growth in business, but has also made it more attractive to traffickers seeking to move their drugs between different regions of the world.
Let's talk digital technology then and the influence that this has on this topic. How are digital technology platforms, online platforms, changing the way that synthetic drugs are produced, distributed, and sold in West Africa?
The internet is proving a democratizing force in synthetic drug markets. Individuals can easily purchase a wide range of drugs and precursors, so the chemicals that are then made to make the final street drugs, online. You don't necessarily need an international connection with suppliers somewhere else, and this makes it easier to become a trafficker in these synthetic drugs markets, and we're seeing more and more individuals entering the criminal market. In our research, we found hundreds of adverts on West African business-to-business websites offering delivery to countries in the region and targeting largely wholesale dealers who will buy from those internet platforms and then sell to local consumers.
The report mentions corruption and state-embedded actors. That's another factor. How does this shape the market and impact governance and public safety?
Right across the world, drug markets are extremely profitable. That means that traffickers can, in some cases, purchase protection from state-embedded actors, for example, at maritime ports to make sure that their shipments are not disrupted. It is corruption rather than violence, which really facilitates the trafficking of cocaine in particular, but also to a lesser extent of synthetic drugs in West Africa and in many other regions of the world.
We focus on West Africa as far as the report goes, but can we see other hubs emerging, particularly given, what we discussed earlier, that digital technology and online platforms make the movement of these synthetic drugs easier and the purchasing thereof?
West Africa is by no means the only region that is affected either by cocaine markets or synthetic drug markets. In fact, we are seeing a growth of transshipment of cocaine in a number of other regions of Africa, including Southern and East Africa. And we are seeing expanding synthetic drug markets, including of methamphetamine. But for example, nitazenes, which are powerful synthetic opioids, have also been detected in some other countries in Africa, suggesting rest is experiencing a similar expansion in the synthetic drugs available.
And what are the factors that contribute to those hubs of Southern and East Africa also being on the rise?
The trends that we're seeing in synthetic drugs markets in West Africa cannot be isolated from global trends. Right across the world, we are seeing more and more synthetic drugs being produced and quickly diffused across communities. And so this is not a localized phenomenon. It is part of a global challenge of synthetic drugs and in particular of synthetic opioids. And because of this, it needs a coordinated and international response.
I guess that feeds into our next question then, in terms of how governments and regional partners should take steps to address these growing threats effectively. Based on your findings, in what ways? You talk of collaboration.
So there are three key pillars of the response. Firstly, strengthening the evidence and intelligence sharing of what drugs are available, chemical composition is, and how the criminal market is working, to support early warning systems in countries so they can act early to prevent a surge in the consumption of new drugs, and have the data to provide health support to consumers. And acting early is key because it is very difficult to counter synthetic markets once they are entrenched. Secondly, partnerships with the private sector, whether it's maritime shipping companies or postal courier services, which are being used as channels for international trafficking. And finally, there must be international collaboration right across the drug supply chain, as well as with information sharing. It is key to identify, regulate, and disrupt illicit drug trafficking at each step of the supply chain.
Is the report readily available for those who'd like to view more?
Of course, the full report, which has a lot more detail, is available on the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime website on synthetic drugs this week, with a focus on cocaine coming out next week.
Thank you so much, Lucia, for your time and for these insights.
Thank you very much.
Lucia Bird is director of the Observatory of Illicit Economies in West Africa at the GITOC. That's the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. A report there looking at how at least 30% of Europe's cocaine passes through West Africa, while synthetic drug markets are expanding and diversifying. Of course, digital technology making it easy for the movement of such drugs, and looking at the economy specifically of West Africa, but as you heard, even Southern and East Africa being emerging hubs. And now we enter the third and final hour of Rise and Shine. Thank you for choosing us to wake up with and staying with us till this point. Asanda, Beda and Peter Ndoro with you for this next hour. Of course, we'll tell you what's coming up in a bit. It's 8 o'clock Central African time. We say good morning to Matapelo Mahape for our latest in the world of news.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and good morning. Zambia's Democratic Party leader, Judith Kabema, has called on politicians to cease politicizing the prolonged delay in the burial of former President Edgar Lungu, who passed away 9 months ago in South Africa. This is the latest twist over the fate of Lungu's body, which remains in a morgue in South Africa and has been subjected to an ongoing battle between his family and Zambia's government over where he should be buried. Speaking in a video release to ZNBC, she said that the country's current president, Hakainde Hichilema, is not responsible for the delay.
You cannot continue accusing an innocent person. President Hakainde Hichilema is innocent in this matter. He is not the one that has refused to bury his predecessor. And let me also speak to the fact that some sector of society from the opposition are propagating the idea that President Hakainde Hichilema must recuse himself from attending the burial of the former head of state. That is not possible.
And former South African Minister of International Relations, Dr. Naledi Pandor, advocates for a humane and coordinated migration approach in South Africa. Speaking on the sidelines of a 2-day national conference on human rights Border Management and Responsible Migration in Johannesburg, Dr. Pando, stressed the importance of a public dialogue, robust civil registration systems and better governance across the continent.
I really congratulate the South African Human Rights Commission for creating an opportunity for concentrated discussion from an informed perspective on the important issue of migration in Africa, and most significantly on the prospects of developing a humane policy framework that would ensure respect for the dignity of migrants and the enjoyment of human rights and proper administrative support in the processes of migration.
And South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa will travel to the U.S. tonight to attend the home-going celebration of life for the late civil rights icon, Reverend Jesse Jackson, in Chicago, taking place tomorrow. Ramaphosa is expected to speak at the event at the request of the Jackson family. The funeral will be preceded by a more public homegoing ceremony today, also in Chicago, which is expected to be attended by the Democratic Party leaders in the United States. SABC's Sherwin Bryce Peace, a report from New York.
Former First families, the Bidens, Obamas and Clintons, are expected at the Friday event at the House of Hope, a 10,000-seat arena in Chicago. Jackson passed away last month at the age of 84 after battling a neurological disorder that affected his speech and mobility, in addition to a long-standing Parkinson's diagnosis. Performances are expected from singer and actress Jennifer Hudson, in addition to gospel greats Pastor Marvin and B.B. Winans. Remarks are expected from the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, and Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. Ramaphosa earlier praised Jackson as a global moral authority who devoted himself to the cause of justice as a human endeavor without borders.
And suspended South African Police Services head of organised crime General Richard Shibiri returned to the stand at the Matlanga Commission today to face a cross-examination. General Shibiri has testified about his relationship with attempted murderer accused Vusmuzi Ked Matlala. The Commission is probing criminal infiltration and political interference in the country's criminal justice system. Shibiri told the Commission that he met Matlala in 2016 and connected with him again in 2024. He also testified that Matlala borrowed him about $4,000 to fix his son's car. Sebastian Mota reports.
General Shibiri told the commission that Ked Matlala lent him the money to fix his son's vehicle. This was after his son was involved in an accident. General Shibiri testified that he paid Matlala back in 2 installments. The first was a 20,000 rands deposit, while the other was a 50,000 rands payment. He says the money was used solely for the vehicle repairs and was in no way connected to his official duties as a police officer. Shibiri is one of the top police officials who have been accused of being in bed with alleged criminal syndicates. Proceedings begin at 9:30 a.m.
And Hezbollah has warned Israeli residents to evacuate towns within 5 kilometers of the border with Lebanon. The warning was shared in a message on the militant group's Telegram channel early this morning. In the message, Hezbollah warned Israel that its military aggression against Lebanese sovereignty and citizens and its destruction of civilian infrastructure will not go unchallenged. The Israeli military began a wave of strikes on Lebanon last night after telling people to leave the southern suburb of Beirut, which is a stronghold of Hezbollah. More than 102 people have been killed and over 600 wounded in Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon since Monday. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Matapela Mahape.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Our sports headline, Tanzania implements robust security strategies for the 2027 AFCON. And Dean Burmester is happy to lead Southern Guards charge at Live Hong Kong. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine. Every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
very good morning to you. Thank you so much indeed for joining us for this, the third and final hour of Channel Africa's Rise and Shine. Yep, we want you to stay connected to Africa and the world with Channel Africa, the international voice of the South African Broadcasting Corporation. You can listen and watch anytime, anywhere at channelafrica.co.za. On the Channel Africa mobile app, as well as on SABC Plus, or via DSTV and OpenView audio bouquets. And you can also catch us on our social media platforms at Channel Africa on Facebook and at Channel Africa 1 on all other platforms. A very good morning to you. My name is Peter Ndoro.
I'm Asanda Beda. Thank you so much for joining us in this hour. Will be one of the things we'll be looking at, going to Channel Africa, who's launching a new and exciting project. It's called Africa Matters. And one of the aims of this project is to tell African stories from the African perspective. As we are Channel Africa, we are first with the African story globally. So we match that with Africa Matters. And we'll be highlighting some of the continent's successes and challenges through this platform. But what is it? We'll find out more about that from Channel Africa's business manager, who'll be joining us in studio in a bit.
And we'll also be taking a look at South Africa's parliament. It continues to look into allegations that elements within the country's police and justice system may have been compromised by corruption and organized crime. And being cross-examined yesterday quite robustly is investigator Paul O'Sullivan, and we'll be unpacking how that went yesterday. All of that still to come right here on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa and you have got something in common. The thirst for knowledge.
The safety and well-being of learners is a shared social responsibility. Parents and guardians play a critical role in ensuring safe, reliable, and lawful scholar transport. Parents are therefore urged to take responsibility for the following. Parents should ensure that learners are on time and ready for collection to prevent unsafe driving practices such as rushing, unscheduled stops, or overloading. By working together, parents, operators, and authorities can protect learners and build a culture of safety on our roads. Issued by the National Department of Transport.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa's parliament is currently investigating serious allegations that organised crime networks may have infiltrated parts of the country's police and justice system. An ad hoc parliamentary committee has been established to examine claims of corruption, criminal infiltration and police interference within the law enforcement agencies. Now, one of the most controversial figures to appear before the committee is private investigator Paul O'Sullivan, who has long been involved in exposing corruption cases in South Africa. Now, during his testimony, O'Sullivan described the manner in which he was arrested by police in 2016 as resembling tactics used by the apartheid-era police. He also told the committee that the courts ultimately ruled in his favour when police attempted to prosecute him. Abongwe Kobakana has this report.
From the beginning, private investigator Paul O'Sullivan stuck to his guns, saying there are bad apples that must be removed from SAPS and state prosecution.
By the way, the police launched an application to set it aside and they lost. And so the reality, and let me explain to you why they lost, Chairman. They lost because they weren't able to prove that their conduct was lawful. So you cannot have police deciding, let's punish this guy by arresting him on a Friday afternoon and keeping him until Monday. And while we keep him, we'll hide him somewhere. No, that's what the apartheid police were doing.
In addition, O'Sullivan says due to the negative reaction he received from some in the criminal justice system, he was forced to move his family out of the country for their protection against people who wanted to kill him.
I had to move my family to the other side of the world for their own protection because people wanted to kill me, and that included police officers who were part of this whole conspiracy against me. So if my conduct was seen as bullying, it was a response to the outrageous and egregious conduct of prosecutors and police officials who acted unlawfully as they were part of the state capture project. They wanted to silence anybody that was exposing corruption. So that really is the very simple answer for the alleged bullying.
O'Sullivan says the financial support he offered to former Independent Police Investigative Directorate boss Robert McBride was aimed at eradicating corruption within the police.
The only possibility of starting somewhere to uncapture a captured state, I saw we weren't going to get anywhere with trying to uncapture the police. We weren't going to get anywhere with uncapturing prosecution service. We had an unlawfully appointed head of prosecution service, Sean Abrahams. We had an unlawfully appointed head of the police. We had an unlawfully appointed head of the DPCI. We had an unlawfully suspended head of IPID, and the acting head of IPID was in cahoots with the criminal syndicate that were involved in state capture. So I was quite keen to see Mr. McBride back at work, and hopefully, it was kind of the last chance of trying to do something.
O'Sullivan also testified that in 2017, KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi attempted to prevent an IPID investigation against former acting National Police Commissioner Khomotso Phahlane.
Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi's involvement in trying to unlawfully pervert the course of justice when it came to the IPID investigation in respect of General Phahlane, and evidence has already been led. And I suggested in one of my earlier emails to this committee that the committee should in fact call Humbalani Kuba, who is a senior IPID investigator, and let him explain to this committee how it was that he came to meet General Mkhwanazi in 2017 and be escorted into a hotel room. Escorted into a hotel room.
Please, can I need your indulgence.
Away from them.
At the start of the proceedings, O'Sullivan was forced to read the content of his letter of apology in front of all the members of the committee.
Thank you, Chairman. Is it working properly?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So it's a lengthy document. The beginning of it, it's an affidavit under oath. It says, I, the undersigned Paul O'Sullivan, state under oath as follows. The purpose of this affidavit is to deal with my apology for and reasons for departure from the ad hoc committee on 2026-02-26. I unreservedly apologize to the Speaker of the National Assembly and all members of Parliament, including but not limited to the Chairman and members of the Ad Hoc Committee, for departing from the Ad Hoc Committee at 13:15.
That voice is Paul O'Sullivan, an investigator, ending that report by Abokwane Kobokana from Parliament in Cape Town. Now, the testimony by Paul O'Sullivan is part of a wider investigation by South Africa's Parliament into allegations that elements within the country's police and justice system may have been compromised by corruption or organised crime. And the inquiry has heard dramatic testimony from investigators, police officials and former associates, raising questions about the integrity of some law enforcement structures in Africa's most industrialised economy. Well, to help us understand the significance of these developments is security analyst and former Interpol ambassador, Andy Mashaile. Andy, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Always good to talk to you.
It's a blessing to be on this show with you, Peter, after a long time, and to the viewers.
So, we often assume, sadly, that because we're close to the story here in South Africa, that everybody is aware of it. But maybe let's just begin by outlining the importance of this inquiry by this ad hoc committee. Why has South Africa's Parliament established this special committee to investigate alleged criminal infiltration in the justice system? Why is it important?
It's very important, Peter, to give teeth to the Portfolio Committee on Police for the sake of doing a proper oversight on the police. Remember, these shenanigans that we're seeing, we have picked up even from the members of the Portfolio Committee that it has been sleeping on the job and by extension sponsoring the wrongdoing that is happening within law enforcement agencies or the criminal justice cluster. And when Lieutenant General Ntanta Mkhwanazi delivered pain on the 6th of July during that Sunday of pain, 6 July 2025, we were able to learn from General Mkhwanazi that there are members of police who are involved in criminality, members of the prosecutorial services, and by extension, members of the judiciary. It is against that background, after those serious and hot allegations that were delivered by the general, the provincial commissioner of KZN, that the president had no option but to establish an ad hoc committee through parliament that will look into the allegations deposited into the public space by General Mkhwanazi, so that a proper system can be put up in place. Obviously, an investigation of those allegations. We have seen, Peter, some of the allegations corroborated by the responses of those that are accused by General Mkhwanazi. The evidence that came through indicated indeed that the Portfolio Committee on Police has not been doing what it is expected to do. One of those examples would be management of the slush fund of crime intelligence. We saw the long and short of the allegations unpacking itself through what came out from the head of crime intelligence, Lieutenant General Dumsani Kumal, who's a divisional commissioner. We saw quite a lot of the evidence and accusations and counter accusations and evidence by investigators suggesting the involvement of senior police officers, prosecutors. We still have to find substance with regard to the judiciary, even though we saw some people, some female judge arrested in Gauteng. So it is against that backdrop that that committee was established.
Andy, we're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately. Thank you so much indeed. Short but sweet, but I think comprehensive, for our understanding of the work that's going on. Andy Mashaile, pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much, Peter, and to the viewers and the production team.
That's Andy Mashaile, who's a security analyst and former Interpol ambassador, talking to us about the workings of the South African Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee. And we didn't get to Paul O'Sullivan, one of the many witnesses that have been before this committee. And he had a pretty difficult time facing questions and also complaining about feeling unwell. But anyway, that's a story that continues to unfold, and we'll be on top of that for you.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126. And we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am,
It's not just talk, it's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with the community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
The first with the African story globally. We are Channel Africa, and we take a look at this story now. In a few weeks, Channel Africa will be launching a new and exciting project. It's called Africa Matters. One of the aims of the project is to tell African stories from an African perspective by highlighting some of the continent's successes and challenges. This year's focus is on climate change and how Africa can finance itself in the mitigation of the effects of climate change. As we count down to the main event, we're joined now in studio by Channel Africa's business manager, Mr. Dixie Ngula, who will share more on this project in terms of its objectives and anticipated outcomes. Big boss, welcome. Good morning. Happy
Hello.
Friday. All those things.
You're the boss here, though. So I'm in your hands. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Okay. And Africa Matters. I think we can say you've been on a tour to talk about this in other radio platforms here in South Africa. But what is it, and what necessitated the formation of Africa Matters?
I think we often hear as a cliche that Africans need to come up with African solutions to African problems, right? And I think that what inspired Africa Matters was that we wanted to, as the SABC's global channel, we wanted to create a catalyst for that conversation to happen, right? So that's the real genesis of Africa Matters. Then we decided as we were thinking what themes could we tackle, particularly in the next coming years, but of immediate necessity, though, is to deal with the issues of climate change. And it's also a wide subject matter. And we decided to drill down into the issue specifically of how we finance as Africans our own recovery. You would know that internationally there is an increase in terms of climate change finance, but Africa gets a very small portion of that. And therefore then this means we must decide on our own, take our destiny into our own hands on how we are going to finance our own recovery.
What about climate change and the African continent makes this speak to the core of the values of Channel Africa, specifically feeding into the objectives then of Africa Matters? As you say, the budgets come to us after everybody else has been prioritized, and yet we, even with our carbon emissions, are the lowest contributor to the planet. So talk to us more about that.
I think you hit the nail on the head there when you say that we are the lowest emitters. Right? We're the lowest contributors to the problem, and yet we face the biggest risk. And that's what necessitated this discussion, is to say that instead of going to international monetary organizations with a begging bowl, it's perhaps a constructive step to say, let's gather, let's come up with our own solutions, which is the reason we're inviting development financiers into the discussion. We are inviting policymakers into the discussion, and we're also inviting academia, we're inviting civil society, labor, and business in general to get all of these thought leaders, as well as you and I, to come and chat about solutions. Obviously, you were asking what necessitated this from the Channel Africa perspective. We play a developmental role on the continent. As you know, we are obviously part of the public service broadcaster, the SABC. And for us, that mandate, we take it very seriously. And it was the reason then that we thought that this is a critical issue for the African continent. It must stamp its own authority on solutions that it requires, so that we are able to deal with these matters on our own terms.
So you've in part answered one of the questions that I was going to follow up with in terms of who Channel Africa is going to be partnering with on Africa Matters. Policymakers, you mentioned. But what about them in terms of the criteria that you were looking at in these partners spoke to you or that you were looking for?
Okay, obviously in society there's multiple sectors, right? And you want to hear the multiple voices. I think that's important because if you were to just say, let's talk to the Department of Environmental Affairs in the context of South Africa, you'll have a singular view there, right, about matters. But it's important that we speak to all the sectors who are involved, because climate change affects you and I as normal humans in the first place, right? When they talk about floods, okay, but it also affects businesses and how they do business. So all of these were taken into account. We're proud to announce that Wits Business School is actually our partner. They are hosting us. The second most important thing, though, for me, is that we often go to these summits, these conferences, and you find that you never really know where to find solutions and outcomes that came out of those discussions. So Wits Business School will craft our outcomes document, which will have steps to say, what are the follow-ups and how do we measure success and what do we need to do next? And I think that that's going to be very helpful in ensuring that we're not creating a talk shop, but we're creating a solution that's going to be sustainable.
Right. Talking of outcomes, then, what are you hoping the overall outcome of this platform of Africa Matters will be?
We're hoping that African countries will begin to say, where is the convergence in terms of creating policies that enable the environment, okay, for us to really implement the solutions around climate change finance from our own perspective.
The listener, the ordinary listener, how do they become a part of these conversations and maybe following what's happening with the other stakeholders who are conversating or making their contributions? Will this be updated on our website?
Yes, it will be. And but also you can just simply send an email to Elena at Channel Africa and that's your RSVP. You're welcome to come through. This is not a project that's going to charge people to come and sit, listen, participate. It's more important that society participates in this very important discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you, boss.
Cool.
Thank you for your leadership here. Joining us is Channel Africa's business manager, Mr. Dixie Ngula, talking about Africa Matters, a new platform that the channel is launching. And this is about telling African stories from an African perspective. And in this, we aim to highlight the continent's successes and challenges, not just the doom and gloom that we hear a lot of times in our news stories. All right, we get to our news headlines now. It's 8:30 Central African time. We're going to end this conversation there, but do stay tuned on channelafrica.co.za for updates on that. Here is Matapelo Mahape.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Your headlines this hour. Today marks Ghana's Independence Day, celebrating the country's historic achievement of becoming the first sub-Saharan African nation to gain independence on March 6 in 1957. And former South African Minister of International Relations, Dr. Naledi Pandor, advocates for a humane and coordinated migration approach on the continent. And Britain's Interior Minister has announced that from June, asylum seekers will have a government support withdrawn if they have the right to work or if they are found to be working illegally. More details on these and other stories at top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now coming up, the sports news with Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
We kick off with football news. Tanzania has begun implementing robust security strategies ahead of the AFCON 2027 tournament, ensuring the games are held in a safe and secure environment. The preparations were discussed during a meeting of the AFCON 2027 National Committee with the head of sports security at the United Nations Valeru Devdivitis in Dar es Salaam. Speaking at the meeting, Acting Director of Sports Development, Boniface Tamba, stressed the importance of comprehensive security measures to guarantee that AFCON 2027 matches take place in safe, stable conditions that meet international standards. Tamba noted that as one of the host countries, Tanzania has the responsibility to strengthen stadium infrastructure, crowd control systems, and the management of major sporting events in line with global guidelines. On to golf news. South African golfer and member of the Southern Guards, GC, Dean Burmester, has welcomed the weight that comes with leading the team at Live Hong Kong. Round 1 on Thursday at the Hong Kong Golf Club at Fanlin saw some exciting action as Spaniard Carlos Ortiz of Torquay GC topped the leaderboard at 10 under par 62, with Burmester just 2 shots off the pace in second. The two-time Live event winner is carrying his SGGC teammates Louis Oosthuizen +1, Charles Schwartzel +1, and Brendan Grace -2 into day 2, but is confident his promising run can inspire his brothers to improve their scores today.
Look, it's a team sport now, and that's probably the positive part about it. Me having a great day, I know all of those guys, when I see them in a little bit, are going to congratulate me, and we'll probably talk a little bit of golf and a little bit of shop. But there's also the other side of that coin where if they ask for my help, I'll get there and I'll give it to them. We're very close. We're basically 4 brothers because of that fact. I know that the rest of the team didn't do great today, but they'll be pushing because they've seen me do well. They want to help us, get to the top and get a victory. We're not out of it. So for that reason, I'm pretty sure the boys are probably practicing right now.
Reflecting on his overall opening round, Burmy admitted he made a judgment error on the par -4 ninth hole, which he ended up bogging.
It was pretty flawless. I made one, mental error off the tee on 9 where I should have hit a 2-iron instead of a 3-wood and overshot the fairway a little bit, and actually got lucky to make a 5, to be honest. But no, I played great from the first tee shot all the way through to the last. I mean, I hardly missed a golf shot, and I left a couple of putts out there, but that's golf, and I'm very proud of the way I kind of just hung together and kept pushing in birdies. I saw a lot of guys making birdies, and I managed to do the same, because normally when that happens, you kind of feel like you've got to chase, and I never really felt like I was ever doing that. I just felt like I was within myself. So it's one of those good in the zone days, as they would say.
And finally, motor racing. Valtteri Bottas has escaped a 5-place grid penalty for the season-opening Australian Grand Prix after Formula One's new sporting regulations voided sanctions not served within 12 months. The Finn had been handed the penalty in his final race for Sauber in 2024 after colliding with Kevin Magnussen, but set out last season as Mercedes reserve before joining newcomers Cadillac. He and teammate Sergio Perez are still expected to start near the back in Cadillac's debut, though Aston Martin's struggles could prevent them from being last in qualifying. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fide Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Coming up on Rise and Shine, former South African Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Dr. Naledi Pandor, lends her voice when it comes to migration in Africa. And this was comments that she made on the sidelines of the 2-day National Conference on Human Rights, Border Management and Responsible Migration taking place in Johannesburg. Stay tuned for that.
Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Let's just do it.
Your life just got easier. Get the Channel Africa app and take us wherever you go. Catch the latest news, enjoy your favorite shows, stream the music you love, and stay connected to the continent. All in one spot, right in your pocket. Simple, quick, and always with you. The Channel Africa app. Download it now on iOS and Android. Wake up, Africa. Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Let's help you rise and shine now as we bring you the latest from the world of economics. Here is Tabiso Lihuku with our business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. Ghanaian cocoa farmers are concerned for they have not been paid for deliveries, even after the regulator released funds to buyers to settle areas and support the struggling sector. The Ghana Cocoa Board last week said it had released $336.74 million to licensed buying companies to clear outstanding payments owed to farmers dating back to November 2025. But farmers and purchasing tracks say the money has yet to reach them, raising questions about whether the funds are instead being used to service debts owed by cocoa buyers to banks. Angola has received a formal approval from the World Bank and its multilateral investment guarantee agency for crucial financial guarantees that will underpin a debt for education swap the country is lining up to pay for new schools. Debt swaps aim to reduce interest payments so governments can spend more in key areas, and Angola is said to be the only second the World Bank has backed after its first just over a year ago in Ivory Coast. Angola's government is set to buy back up to $400 million of its most expensive commercial debt using a much lower cost new loan thanks to two World Bank and MIGA guarantees that cover the repayments if any problems were to arise. The KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Agricultural Union says for now it will not be taking the South African government to court over the administration of the foot and mouth disease vaccines, as the state is doing its best to fight the disease. The union's comments follow the filing of papers by farmer unions, the Southern African Agricultural Initiative, also known as Suider Afrika Agri Initiatief, Sakaliga, and Free State Agriculture at the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria earlier this week. The farmers argue that the government's control over vaccine imports is slowing down the response to the outbreak and that export markets had closed because of the disease, leading to an estimated $93 million in losses. However, the union chairperson and vice chairperson of Red Meat Producers Association, Peter John Hassad, says they will not be heading to court at the moment, as the challenges cannot be resolved overnight, and has argued the private sector to work with government.
Rely on the private sector as well to help where they can. There are a lot of guys out there that have got knowledge, that know about this disease, and let's work together in one direction and get it on top of this disease, because it's really crippled, especially the province of KZN and definitely the country as well.
Section 7 of the Value Added Tax Act that allows South Africa's Minister of Finance to change the VAT rate has been ruled unconstitutional and invalid in the Western Cape High Court. The Democratic Alliance brought the application last year after a dispute over a proposed 1% VAT increase announced by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana in his 2025 budget speech, which was later withdrawn. The court found that it takes 12 months before Parliament can either confirm or reject a new VAT rate rate adjustments proposed by the minister. The court was particularly concerned that if Parliament decides after 12 months not to confirm the changes, taxpayers will not be reimbursed. The High Court has asked the Constitutional Court to have the final say in order for the ruling to stand. The High Court maintains that it doesn't oppose delegating legislative authority to the executive, but its primary concern is the VAT time lag of 12 months. A coalition of more than 20 states led by Democratic state attorneys general are suing the Trump administration, challenging a new 15% tariff imposed on countries around the world. The new revised levy was imposed after the Supreme Court invalidated Trump's reciprocal tariff regime last month, with the highest court ruling he had overstepped his legal authority. Sherwin Bryce Peace reports that the courts will again have to weigh in on the legality of the new tariff regime.
The good news is that almost all countries and corporations want to keep the deal that they already made, knowing that the legal power that I, as president, have to make a new deal could be far worse for them, and therefore they will continue to work along the same successful path that we had negotiated before the Supreme Court's unfortunate involvement.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 379. In Botswana, it's at 13 pula 24. Kenya, 128 shilling 177. In Zambia, 19 kwacha 124. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there, 5 rand 24. Russia, 77 rubles 749. India, 92 rupees 128. China, 61.90. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 16 rand 41 cents. 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Gold is trading at $5,163 and platinum at $2,155 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $83.44 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabiso Lohoko.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Former South African Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Dr. Naledi Pandor, has called for more humane and coordinated approach to migration in Africa. In an interview with Channel Africa on the sidelines of the two-day National Conference on Human Rights, Border Management and Responsible Migration in Johannesburg, Pandor emphasized the need for open public dialogue, stronger civil registration systems and improved governance across the continent.
I really congratulate the South African Human Rights Commission for creating an opportunity for concentrated discussion from an informed perspective on the important issue of migration in Africa, and most significantly on the prospects of developing a humane policy framework that would ensure respect for the dignity of migrants and the enjoyment of human rights and proper administrative support in the processes of migration. I think it's time Africa deliberates on this subject, and I admire the Human Rights Commission for having been bold enough to take this step, because I know it's not an easy subject, but someone has to lead on it. And it's very encouraging that the Human Rights Commission is doing so.
South Africa, like you explained when you were deliberating with the audience in the plenary, that you yourself, you've been a migrant because of the historical apartheid that we had in South Africa, where it pushed some of our leaders like yourself, Nelson Mandela's and Thabo Mbeki's, to go into exile into other countries where they sought refuge and they were received, and they planned the whole project of dealing with this monster of apartheid. debate, and then you were somehow received with a hostile reception, but you managed to, out of that, come back, do wonders with the challenges that were on the ground. Do our people really on the ground socially understand the importance of receiving other people who are facing challenges? We've seen conflicts that are ravaging South Sudan, in the Sahel area. You being at the helm before you retired from government, you have been dealing with such issues.
Well, I think the situations are not necessarily easily interchangeable. So I don't want to be simplistic in approaching the subject. I have said in the meeting that it is a complex issue, challenging not just South Africa, but globally as well. We know what's been happening in the United States of America, for example. So I do believe that what we need to do is have a more open public conversation on why communities and individuals have to resort to movement against their will often and due to economic circumstances. We don't talk enough about economic migrants and what could be done with respect to providing them with assistance. And we also don't hold countries from which citizens depart responsible for the well-being of their citizenry. Movement is an important old age practice, but the levels of illegal movement and migration that we see, of displacement, all of these speak to conflicts on our continent, to poor administration, to lack of human rights. We have to address all of these in order to arrive at a situation where our people have stability, security, and prosperity.
Coming out of the African Union Summit, I engaged with your counterpart, Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, the architect of Agenda 2063, the Africa that we want. And one of the issues is that she's also running an organization as an advisor, which was established in Ghana. And the goal for this organization is for borderless Africa, where they're advocating for free movement of people. They are advocating for an African identity document, but also passport, so that everybody can be in one database and recognize each other. Whenever you are moving from Zimbabwe or South Africa to Malawi, you are recognized that you are an African but coming from a certain country. Just like Europeans have done that, we use the Schengen visa. You can go through Spain and come out of Germany and fly back home. But what she emphasizes is that besides the issue of the slow implementation of this particular agenda, she said that it's up to the people. Do you think we have done enough as Africans, of course, not only South Africa, to let people know that there is an African Union passport?
I don't think we've popularized it. And I think that links to what I mentioned earlier, which is poor civil registration. We are inefficient in management of our populations. We need to improve that. In Europe, you can move indeed, but their civil registration is of the highest order. So we need to improve our efficiency. The ideal that Dr. Dlamini-Zuma is referring to is very important for Africa. We waste so much money with these immigration strictures and policies and, producing passports at every border, applying for visas, lack of economic engagement because movement is so difficult. So indeed, this is something we should strive for, but there are other administrative tasks that we must undertake in order to achieve that ideal.
Coming up on Rise and Shine, it's Friday, so we catch you up with what's happened in the world of the arts and culture, of entertainment, of lifestyle. We get that feature coming up on the show, and it's always brought to us by Channel Africa's very own Nhlanhla Mahlangu, so stay tuned for that.
The safety and well-being of learners is a shared social responsibility. Parents and guardians play a critical role in ensuring safe, reliable, and lawful scholar transport. Parents are therefore urged to take responsibility for the following. Parents should ensure that learners are on time and ready for collection to prevent unsafe driving practices such as rushing, unscheduled stops, or overloading. By working together, parents, operators, and authorities can protect learners and build a culture of safety on our roads. Issued by the National Department of Transport.
After Rise and Shine on Channel Africa comes On the Move, that show hosted by Benjamin Mushatama and Palisa Tau. Benjamin joining us in studio now to tell us what to expect on this Friday. A happy one and a bright one as you are dressed appropriately.
I was just trying to, it's Friday anyway, so, bright and Friday.
And also,
or
your
welcome in
show
the
on
World Cup.
Friday is quite colourful.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we're going to have a nice one today because we're living in a digital world, right? And everything is becoming digitized. I don't know when last you guys have used your LPs and your CDs. When last?
I don't even know where I packed
When I
mine.
still had
It's somewhere in the
black-
garage.
when I still had black hair.
All right, we're going to be speaking about something really interesting, but we're moving into the literature space. Digitizing African books. It's
Okay.
probably one of the biggest challenges because when you go online, it's very easy to get your Shakespearean novels, to get your mainstream Western books, but to get an African book, it's a big challenge.
Yeah, it is. I'm part of a book club, so I know exactly
I wonder
what
why
that's
that
like.
is. Why is that?
I just don't think maybe we've thought about it as much as we should have. But because are we that digitized to actually look for books online? Or are we still going to that retail bookstore for that African book find?
And also, it's not easy to read a book on a phone. You almost need a desktop or a tablet. And most of us have access to phones more than other digital screens.
Yeah. So we're going to find out how difficult that is, why the transformation is taking so long for us as Africa, and can we get it right? Because when you look at the literacy rates on the African continent, it's another challenge as well.
Yeah. All right, well, that's coming up after Rise and Shine here on Channel Africa.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
All right, Channel Africa podcasts are coming up on the platform. Of course, channelafrica.co.za is where you can go to access that. And our colleague Peter Ndoro spoke to somebody, another interesting guest and topic this week. So who was that?
So the war between Israel, United States and Iran erupted. And of course, the immediate effect is oil supply. And sadly, a continent such as ours, we produce oil, very little refining, and we end up importing a lot of our oil. And even South Africa, the Brent crude oil price internationally, even though we might be importing from across the continent, the Brent crude price actually then affects the oil price. So I spoke to Dr. Mashele and also Dr. Padi Lukhotla about what lessons can we learn from this disruption. We should have learned when we did the COVID story about self-sufficiency, self-sustainability, and they had some pretty interesting things to say. In fact, let's listen to Dr. Padi Lukhotla right now.
Things come to the prepared, and being prepared all the time is very important. And to be prepared, you really have to think about scenarios and then devise strategies in anticipation of any of the scenarios eventuating. But scenarios are informed by your local conditions. And the local conditions in Africa is that only 4% of the population has particularly energy for cooling. And when you look at
All right, so that's Dr. Padi Lukhotla. And look out for the podcast on our YouTube channel. That's this week's edition that's come out today.
Now for RT Beats time, it is. On Fridays, we bring you this feature. That's where we catch you up with what's happened in the world of arts and culture, lifestyle, even music and entertainment. Here's Ndlandla Mahlangu with this week's edition.
Welcome to this week's African RT Beats exclusive to Channel Africa, The African Perspective. I am Ndlandla Mahlangu. In this week's segment, tributes pour in following the death of South African comedian and actor Soli Filenda and the 11th edition of Goma's Amani Festival to be hosted in Lubumbashi in the DRC. The arts community in South Africa is grieving the loss of legendary comedian, actor, TV show host and activist Soli Filenda. Philinda, an outstanding stand-up comedian, was renowned for his work in TV, radio and theatre, which spanned over many years. Philinda died at the age of 65 in Cape Town. He was widely known for hosting the South African version of Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? His comedy often drew on the life in the Cape Flat, using humor and storytelling to reflect everyday experiences in local communities. Comedian and actor Mark Lottering says Solly was a pioneer.
Solly's work, the influence that he's had is tremendous without many of us realizing it. I think, for us to go on stage and just tell our stories, for me certainly as a comedian, to go on and just do what I do without having to pay much attention to how it's going to be received or what I'm allowed to say, what I'm not allowed to say. We can do that now because of people like Solly Philander and others who have broken down those barriers.
South Africa's street food culture took center stage in Johannesburg last weekend as the Windhoek Grill Food Market brought together music lovers, food enthusiasts, and some of the country's most loved Kasi Township food sports. The event also marked the finale of a nationwide search for South Africa's realest one-handed food legend, with the winner walking away with $12,200 in prize. Channel Africa reporter Lebogang Mabange was there.
The smell of grilled meat, music echoing across the venue, and long queues at food stalls set the scene at the Real Food Market held at the Kromdraai Creativity and Impact Hub in Johannesburg. The event formed part of a campaign celebrating South Africa's street food culture and the everyday food sport that many people across the country support. Brand manager Tato Mutibeli says the idea was to create an event that also rewards supporters who have been part of the journey.
So this was quite an important task that we needed to actually also incentivize our consumers and our audience that through all the journey that they've been with us. So we needed to come up with an event like this, the first of its kind. And obviously we needed to actually cut ourselves away from other market events. So that's why we came up with this to incentivize, and it's a free event for our consumers.
Beyond the food stalls, the festival also featured live music performances from several South African artists, bringing together different elements of local culture. South African singer and songwriter Zoe Mudika says music plays an important role in shared experiences like these.
I think it's important to realize that music is actually a part of every part of our lives, and so it would be involved in the places that we eat, in the places that we perform, where we need to feel better about ourselves, where we need to be lifted up. And it's beautiful to see that the festival is championing not just good food and feeling good, but also the beauty of music and being able to bring all of us together.
The event also marked the final stage of a national competition that saw thousands of South Africans vote for their favorite food sport, the kind of meal easy enough to enjoy while holding a drink in the other hand. 5 finalists made it to the final round. In the end, Mark's Pub and Shisanyama from Pretoria was announced as the winner. Katlego Ntwedibe from the establishment reacted moments after the announcement.
I'm still shaking because we didn't expect this. And why we didn't expect this is because this is not our home ground. Our food is great. You can't argue that, but this is not Pretoria. This is Johannesburg. And our competitors are great cooks. And we understood that they will have the home ground advantage. They will have the crowd. But hey, their food won.
For Channel Africa's RT Beat, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Organizers of the 11th edition of Amani Festival have announced that the festival will be held in Lubumbashi, southern DRC, from April 10th to the 12th this year due to insecurity in Goma. For years, the festival has come to define Goma's cultural scene. Launched in 2014 in Goma, the Amani Festival celebrates peace and living together. It has become a powerful symbol of peaceful coexistence in eastern part of Congo, where dozens of armed groups wreak havoc. Each year, the festival brings together artists from the city, from across Africa and beyond, attracting several thousand spectators. Since January 2025, Goma, the capital of North Kivu province, has been under the control of the M23 rebels. That's it from this week's African RT Beats. Until next Friday, for Channel Africa, I am Ndlandla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
And that's it from us as Rise and Shine. Asanda, Beda.
And Peter Ndoro, the news is next.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Hey, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, South African time. Thank you to Peter and Asanda. It's time for us to move on with On the Move with myself, Benjamin Mushatama, and Palesa Tau. But before we get on with the show, let's get the latest news.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Benjamin. Top stories this hour. Today marks Ghana's Independence Day, and the Iranian Kurdish opposition deny reports that their forces have crossed the border into Iran. With the news at 9 o'clock, I'm Matapara Mahape. Good morning. Today marks 69 years of Ghana's independence. It also marks the country's historic achievement as the first sub-Saharan African nation to gain independence from colonial rule on March 6, 1957. Led by Kwame Nkrumah, the day serves as a symbol of national pride, resilience and independence for Ghanaians worldwide. As reflect on its progress since independence, Ghana's High Commissioner to South Africa, Benjamin Kwashi, speaks of what this day means to Ghanaians.
It symbolizes our hard-won freedom, and it's always the national spirit we have to believe that we are able to lead and